everybody? It's almost an agreement time. I don't know. It's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy day. Another great Compass podcast yesterday, which will come out tomorrow as well. But, we do what we do. And I guess I do what I do in that case. But some exciting news this week. End of session. So any and all new laws or changes to laws, more or less, are in the books. And all the discussions from there. There's been some fun early voting stats that have come out, as well as at least one candidate has been reported to the DA's office for campaign finance issues. We'll talk about that. Then we have another candidate who had some previous personal financial issues which came up this week, which is an interesting story. So anyway, politics and money, it's a mess. We're going to talk about that. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Hit us up on the Instagram. No, that's a lie. We don't really do Instagram. Go to our website, almostagreement.com. I got my voter guide on there. I'll make some edits to it once Tuesday rolls around. Oh, yeah, so there's something going on Tuesday, actual election day. Like, share, friend, follow, all those things. Tell your friends about us. We're going to keep doing what we do. And it's showtime. What's up, buddy?
What's going on?
Nothing. I'm texting Max to tell him to give us a call when he's ready.
Holla back. Ain't no holla back, girl.
So I don't know. What's new? What's happening? I want to. You get to pick the first topic since I railed about my cancellation business for the first 15 minutes of last show.
Oh, it's important. I've seen in the news. I was trying to find it because I saw an article that was about the assembly and all what they got accomplished this past session and what they fought over, but I think it just kind of hits on little tiny topics.
Right. I did get confirmation that I'm not crazy about the state registration tax holiday. After I told you, I thought I was crazy for a minute on that, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because I mentioned something to the Compass guys when we were taping the other day about it, and they both kind of like, what? And they don't really cover state stuff. Their focus is here, unless it's something state level that involves here, which apparently is one of their things. They're trying to get... they're within a handful of subscribers before they want to hire somebody, or at least bring a part-time journalist in. And they do have somebody in Nashville that every once in a while they'll buy stories from, or something like that, how it works.
Freelancers.
Right. And so they'd like to lean more into some of those options, and possibly actually have a full-time reporter here that works for them.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I'd be excited for him if that could happen. That's the point of the podcast. That's my job for them in the podcast, is to get them a good podcast, put a good product together, help sell them and their knowledge base so that they can get more subscribers for their actual paper. If we can make some money on the podcast on the side, bonus. But really their only goal in is it is used as a marketing process. And so I am trying to support that. I'm spending all the money they're paying me for this first month on advertising their podcast on Google or on YouTube and Google. So, and we have I don't know, full disclosure, the way we... son of a bitch. Hey, buddy, we're taping.
Cool.
Max is on the show. It's been a while. So we'll get to you in a second. I was finishing the thought. Not really.
Finish.
I don't remember what my thought was now. You totally interrupted it. Because I remember I was made a point because I really wanted to talk to you because we talked a little bit about our reassessment thing and all that kind of stuff. That was one of the topics that I forgot to do mention in the intro. But that is definitely...
You start talking about the registration waiving.
Yeah, and we were talking about just some of the right. We were the legal, or the 112th Assembly has finished its session, barring a special session called by the chair or the governor. We're done for the year. So everything that's happened has happened. Our exciting news on that end is 1927 just kind of died in subcommittee. It never got voted on in the last session of the subcommittee that it was in, and since it never got voted on, it never got moved to a full floor vote, so it just kind of, for now, fades away. I do intend on trying to follow up and figuring out if since it was in process and not finished, does it start over, or do they pick up from where they left off if they want to, or is it a whole new bill has to get introduced and they start from scratch?
Right.
Or what? So I don't know what that part is. Because, again, we've joked about summer session being a place where bills go to die. But as far as I understand, at least, it's not slated for summer session. It just didn't get voted on.
Right.
So it's it's in purgatory, or bill purgatory, I guess would probably be the most standard one. But I mean, there's plenty of other stuff going on. The school funding thing has passed, as well as the entirety of apparently Governor Lee's agenda. And I don't get it. I'm so confused on the school funding thing, because Ron McPherson, and he did mention it when I talked to him, he's like, the long term has some concerns. They don't think that Jennifer Owen was telling me something about how, like, over the next 5 years, the percentage of funding changes stronger to local. And so that's one of the ways that this kind of, like, it looks good now because the state's pushing more money in. But over time, the state's percentage of the total is going to start coming down, and the local is going to have to make it up. The obligation is going to be still there from the state on how much total is spent, but whose obligation to pay it changes over time. And I guess that's one of the concerns that some of the people that don't like it are screaming about, because it's either we're going to have counties that don't want to spend the money, that refuse to make it up, and so over time the actual total budgets are going to shrink, or to keep that, with inflation kind of bullshit going on, the counties are going to have to pick up more and more and more of the weight. And in a county like Knox County, where we try really hard not to have any property taxes, that's going to have to come in. That's the only way that Knox County is going to be able to afford it, if they want to. And so, but that's, down the road.
Yeah.
Which I still don't get. Like, I got another argument about vouchers, like I do. Because
About what?
About vouchers and people trying to say that vouchers takes money out of schools. And it's like, as long as you guys understand correctly that when you say takes money out of school, it's if you take a student out of school for anything, the school loses money. If I move to Texas, that's my running standard. I've repeated 1,000 times. If I move to Texas and takes my kids with me, Knox County loses a dollar amount per student that I pull out of Knox County schools. Now,
the question is, what do they do with that money then?
I mean, the state just doesn't send it out. I don't know what the local portion of it is, but the state just doesn't send it. The state's portion, they just don't send it.
I got that.
And so it stays in the general fund in the state or whatever. And that's another one that I don't quite understand. I don't know if the local portion does the same thing, or if the local portion just sits there. Because theoretically, if you pull a bunch of kids out and the state takes the portion of the state kicking in, which is only less than half of the budget currently, but the county still kicks in what it does, it actually has more more money per student on the other side.
Yeah, like if the state is kicking in a dollar amount per student, I would guess that means that it costs that much to teach that student. So then by reducing it, you're not teaching that student. So, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I'm kind of thinking.
Right. That's essentially how that's how the current BEP formula is built, and this new TISA formula it's student based. Like, that's always been a thing in the old and the new formula, that your funding is based on your number of enrolled students.
All right. So
if you take a bunch of students out, and when I was arguing, I made a dumb joke, like I do, about, if a student died of COVID this last couple of years or whatever, that school would lose a certain amount of funding. And so somebody comes back at me, well, the state said they're not holding harmless for loss of registered students because of COVID-related issues. It's like, yes, I know that the state said that they're not going to reduce budgets because of how many kids didn't come back after that 2020 year, because there's a lot of kids that went homeschool or other for 2021.
Right.
And since that enrolled number was so far down, technically the state didn't have to send the amount of money, but the state said, we're not going to do that because of the situation. And so it's like, yes, person that I'm chatting with, you were correct. I just threw COVID in there as a bad joke portion of my statement. It had having nothing to do with COVID, just anything in general, any reason, whether we go to private school, whether we move to Texas.
Right, but the move to Texas isn't quite a one-to-one. Because it's less likely that someone. Yes, people move all the time, but I think
Right.
you're going to have fewer people that are moving out of state versus local people that go to a charter school. Their big fear is there's going to be new charter schools popping up. They're going to
Right.
take
A large
take
percentage,
enrollment away.
right,
Yeah.
large percentage of enrollment. But again,
Well, if you're saying so, the statement is completely wrong. If people are saying it's taking money away from schools, no, it's taking the money away from the school your kid goes to. It's still going to schools, like the voucher program, it's still going to schools, just not your school.
If you're counting it right, if you're counting charter schools as schools, but what and to be fair, that would be a fun little poke to put. But the real, I mean, it is clearly implied to me that they are referencing is taking money out of public schools. But at the same tournament, though, it's like I don't know about halls, but Rocky Hill over here has 10 trailers out in the backyard that are classrooms.
Yeah,
we had
a few. Yeah.
We had like 8 at Bearden when we went there in 2000.
Yeah. Now there's definitely overcrowding in some
so
schools.
It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe that would be helpful. And if you're going to break down like the business costs of kind of things going on, take a lot of that stuff off the books. Those are portable buildings, and the portability of those buildings means you could pick them up and you could sell them. You're not going to sell them for what you paid for them or anything, but you could sell them and get them off the property and get a little bit of funding back on that.
The other argument is if you have these vouchers and Rocky Hill gets down into not like an overpopulated school, does that save money 10 years down the road when Rocky Hill says we need to spend $100 million on this addition to this school?
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like well, because one of the things that people like to do is like, well, infrastructure costs and building costs and maintenance costs. It's like, well, if our student body is down, then some of those costs should come down with it.
Yeah,
you have less kids in the building. It would be less energy.
You have less kids. You have less pipes to fix. The infrastructure, the infrastructure is still there.
Yeah, but you would have less kids flushing. You'd have less flushes. You'd have less moving water. You'd have less kids flushing shit other than shit. Stuff down the toilets. You have less doors opening or doors open for less amount of time, letting hot air, cold air in or out, whatever.
I mean, most of those things just break down over time in general.
Sure, but you have less total bodies, so the AC should be a little bit cheaper to run. Not a ton, but you have less total bodies making heat in the rooms. It's not huge numbers. But, I mean, fuck that. I mean, again, these portable buildings all have AC units on it and shit. Those aren't running. You know, that it would have a... If you pulled down Rocky Hill to the attendance it should have in the building in and of itself, its total cost to exist would come down. Maybe not comparable to the amount that gets taken out for the number of students that leave, but the total cost of operations would come down, and that's not counting staffing.
I think it would be by much.
I'd be curious to see their KUB bill if there's a way to break it down, because I mean those buildings aren't, I mean, they're not super efficient.
You
buildings.
could have that fluctuate just by having a cold snap or a heat wave.
Okay,
I mean, that's where you would see major. Essentially, the entire city would be under that, which generally your rates kind of go up.
Okay, so if I want to, like, it's like 6 buildings, and each building is 2 classrooms, so that's 12 classrooms. If they're all under 3rd grade, that's 20 per classroom. So that's 240 kids.
You just stuck on the portables? I'm thinking just the main building
I'm
itself.
on parts of it, sure. All because you're trying to tell me it's not that big a difference. I think those 12 buildings, not taking lights, not taking heat or air conditioning, would have a marked difference on their KUB bill.
All right.
I think it would be a noticeable difference.
12 classrooms, say 30 kids. You really think they're going to lose that many people to wipe out all of the portables to then save that money?
I mean, if you don't have the student body, why would you use them?
I
mean, that's
360 kids, something like that.
240.
The great example for me is my house. I have heated and air conditioned 2,200 square feet house. And then I have Jen's building out back that is a portable building that we have heat and air in and electricity in that building. My KUB bill, I have 2 separate bills because they're on 2 separate powers. They are usually almost identical because that portable building just is not as efficient as a regular building. Or 800 square feet is the same as 2,200 square feet.
Well, I mean, it's also got like industrial printers and all the other crazy shit your wife's got going on in there.
That's true, but it also doesn't have 3 bathrooms that people sit and shower and shave in.
Right.
You know, it's not
who shaves?
All the other stuff that you're doing. I don't know who shaves. Probably the ladies, I would guess, their legs.
As soon as I started to say it, I realized what I was saying. But I mean, yeah.
So,
And again, I'm not trying to imply that it would offset the cost of that many students. But it's my point in that whole thing is I think it's a shit argument to say that, well, the fixed costs of the buildings is a truly fixed cost that it doesn't change, and utilities would change, maintenance costs would change, because you don't have a guy going out there and fixing the heater and the air conditioner on every portable building twice a year.
I think it would change. I think it would be not far off from negligible.
I mean, in the scheme of a $600 million budget, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't give it a 1% total, but it is a real number, whatever it is. And is it enough? Is it enough of a difference to hire one more teacher? Would it be? You think it'd be $50,000 a year? I think it could be getting in that $50,000 range, easy. And so if that's the trade-off, that we get rid of this extra stuff that we don't need anymore because we lose students, we can have more teachers and actual teaching staff instead of maintenance staff. I don't know. Again, the moral of the story is I don't know. The I just don't I cannot get anybody.
You don't know, but you were going to argue.
I can't get any
side of something
because I don't believe the narrative, I guess, is my problem. I don't buy it because all I get is the same argument from 10 different people that hate the idea of vouchers. And it's can anybody explain to me, one, what you mean by vouchers and what that actually means? And it's always they take money from schools. And it's well, no, they don't. But, I can't get anybody to give me the actual sales pitch for why vouchers work. I'm just running off the assumption of my understanding of vouchers, but not the plan that has been discussed here locally.
Yeah, we haven't really had it locally, but I want to say either Memphis or Nashville started some charter schools 5 or 10 years ago. So, I mean, there may be a little bit of, what we're looking for, not really background, but I guess some kind of evidence as to how it's ran the past, 10 years.
Right.
And I want to say some of what I've read, some charter schools aren't doing that great.
Right.
It's charter schools are going to be so much better, and they haven't increased anything. As far as their learning and testing scores.
And the charter school, as I understand it, is just saying it's not this student gets an amount of money. If he wants to go to your school, you get that money. It's you have 500 students in your charter school. The state puts in 500 students worth of funding. It's an indirect voucher, essentially, is what a charter school is. Because, again, that's one of the definitions I don't know.
See, I always assumed it was they give you a voucher for $5,000. They're all right, pick your school. You want to pick a private school that's $50,000 a year? Here's still $5,000 to get you closer to it.
Right, but again, but I think that's the different that's one of those definitions that nobody bothers to take a second to figure out. Is that there's public schools, there's charter schools, and there's private schools. Right. Charter schools are in the middle where it's not a direct funding thing, where it's that I send my kids to the charter school, I get money from the state, and I give the state to the school my kids go to. That would be a full private school transaction. The charter school idea is that it's a private entity charter school, and for the number of students that they have, they get funding from the state equivalent. And so it's an indirect public school kind of deal. You may as the parent pay the difference if the school wants more, but I don't know how that exactly works. Yeah. But I mean, again, I don't. To be clear, my stance on it is I'm not pro-voucher, but I'm pro-hearing the pitch. I would like to hear the real pitch. Because
I'd like to hear more about it, exactly.
Right, the only people that I hear anything from are the people that hate them a lot. And when I try to push on certain items, like the argument that it takes money away from schools being, yes, true, but not really valid, that's all I get. And then I get these big, long explanations of how, and then they go into, fixed costs in the schools. The buildings cost, no matter how many kids are in there, the buildings cost this much to maintain. It's that's not true, because it'll cost different depending on how many kids in there. More kids break more stuff. It's a fact. More kids require more janitorial. These are real things that make a difference. And so I refuse to accept poor arguments on why vouchers are evil, because that's all I ever get is it takes money, the super cliche or whatever is public money, public schools. Private money, private schools. Public money should not go to private schools. Like, that's the big thing. And it's like, and again, like, Max, you'll appreciate this. Sam and I talked about this a while ago. It's like, we are comfortable as a society with letting private industry do a lot of stuff on our public behalf. Our cities and counties and states and federal government hire private people to do all sorts of jobs on our behalf.
Yep.
But not schools. That one is off the table. No way.
Well, some of those we don't have really a choice. If, the TDOT wants to subcontract out an asphalt job.
Sure we do. We have the choice of building a giant infrastructure of the equipment and the staff to go out and pave roads. We could do it. It's the same thing the schools are. It's the same thing. We are capable of it. We could put the Tennessee Department of Transportation that does all their own work. So we're building all the roads. So Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, is out buying the paving machines, buying the dump trucks, buying this, buying that to do the job. Just like we have teachers in school buildings to do the job. The job is to have paved roads. If it's state operated, then the state gets the equipment and the personnel needed to build the roads. But instead, because it's more efficient and cheaper for the state, and generally a better product theoretically, the state goes, hey, instead of spending millions of dollars on machinery and equipment, how about we just hire this guy over here because he knows what he's doing and they're good at it. And it'll be cheaper for them than us to build this whole apparatus to do that job.
Yeah, long term.
It's not a requirement. It's just I agree with you that it's the smarter, more logical move. But to say you have to do it, you don't have to. It's just, it makes sense. Why would we put all this extra stuff into the state budget to do it ourselves?
Wasn't what I was saying whatsoever.
I apologize. I misunderstood you then. Please.
I said the public don't have a choice when TDOT does this. Oh, you're saying we acquiesce to it, but I'm saying the general public doesn't have a say to. In the example, TDOT, whether they decide to subcontract out a certain job.
I mean, we absolutely do. We could demand that Governor Lee makes TDOT pave roads on their own. We don't accept private contractors. Like, we could demand that in the State House. We could get Massey or Bandus
they
on
do.
that.
I don't think they solely subcontract out all their work.
I'm not saying they do or they don't, but you're saying that
you're saying that we could require Bill Lee to require TDOT to do all of their own work.
You're saying we don't have a choice. I'm saying yes, we do. We elect the people that make the rules on how these things go down.
Maybe I'm under a misunderstanding of. I'm assuming that there are times where TDOT does stuff, and there's maybe, depending on what equipment they have, 'cause I'm assuming they don't have enough equipment to do all the jobs all across the state, and I'm assuming that's one reason why they subcontract out something. Maybe they've got 50 of their pavers working on a major interstate project, and they're like, hey, this stuff needs to happen up in Johnson City. Let's have a local company do it there, so we're not moving equipment from Memphis to Johnson City. That's a 5-6 hour drive or whatever.
Okay, and so
I'm assuming that there are still projects they're doing. I don't know if it's 50-50 or anything like that.
For the sake of efficiency, the state says, hey, we can let private companies do this and it'd be okay.
But again, when TDOT makes that choice to subcontract out, that's not something the general public has a say on.
Currently in the specific format, yes, when TDOT decides they want to do it, they can do what they want. But yes, we as the public do have a choice because we can go to TDOT meetings and we can go to public hearings and we can go to our senators and governors and whatnot and say no.
Whatever, I do what I want.
Say no, we don't accept this. We elected you. We have this department. Why are we contracting this out? We don't accept that. Mm-hmm. That is supposed to be democracy.
And they have to listen to us, right?
No, they don't have to listen to us.
What?
Hold on.
What do you mean? All you got to do is you just go to a meeting and you tell them what you want and you get your way.
No.
Isn't that how politics works?
Politics works. These motherfuckers, whoever gave the most money to their cause, they listen to those people. That's how it really works.
That does tend to happen.
So if you have enough money, yes, you can go to those meetings and get whatever you want passed.
Wait, how many businesses do you own? Okay, yes, you are friendly to us. How much did you donate to our campaign last year? Oh, yes, you are friendly to us.
That's why, when it does snow, you see some random road plowed because there is a city council member who lives on that road. Oh, that road got plowed. That's weird. Not the main road, the side road. Okay, gotcha. Bob. Does that just take off?
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
I had to step out for half a tick. The little
Well,
lady.
so when I was planning on coming there, and then I was reminded we had plans to go to the Chatterbox because it was wrestling night at the Chatterbox.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in there. I was like, oh, it's about 9:30. I need to go out to the car and call in. And I'm walking out, and like the wrestling's going on, and like I hear over like that loudspeaker, they have like a PA system. And they're like, you're driving a red car, whatever, license plate, and a white truck, this license plate. Will you move them out of the way so the ambulance can get in here? I was like, what the fuck?
Well, you could have been up in Fountain City where the ambulance needed to get in too yesterday.
Well, we can discuss that here in a minute. But so I was like, so I went out to the car, and I'm sitting here, and I called, but he didn't answer, and I was like, oh, he might be doing something, or walked away from his phone. So I'm sitting here. 3 ambulance rolls in and 5 cop cars. And so then I got out, and apparently one of the wrestlers or something couldn't feel his leg. And they called the ambulance, and apparently they had a cut on his thigh because, they do the whole baseball bats wrapped in barbed wire and glass tables and all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
That is femoral artery. And they couldn't get it to stop bleeding.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, that's a good way to die.
Yeah, and I was like, that's nothing. And so my wife I walked out, and I looked, and my wife's over by the ambulance, and I look at my buddy Todd, and I was like, you see where Jennifer said? He's like, what the hell is she doing over there? I go, probably TikToking. I was like, he's like, and so I called her. I was like, baby, don't TikTok this. I don't think that they want this publicity for their bar about someone being hauled off in an ambulance.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they could probably use the clarification that it's not a couple biker gangs to roll back into that joke again.
Maybe they could get some more fans.
you
They're like, oh, hey, man, they have some hardcore wrestling. Like, we'll have to go check that out,
Check
man.
that shit out, man. Fucking dying and shit.
Man, it's like every other week, man. Police, ambulance got to show up.
Well, the thing in Fountain City, you realize that was the president of the Outlaws?
I didn't know that part. I just heard it was two. It was 2 outlaws and some other biker gang. One outlaw was shot and dead. One other biker gang was shot dead. One outlaw was shot and survived. The other biker guy got shot and he's in the hospital. And then apparently some third guy ended up at Blunt Memorial or something like that with a gunshot. And he got, and just to add insult to injury, he goes to Blunt Memorial with a gunshot wound, and they airlift him to UT. So he's back here in Knoxville.
Yeah, well, how did he get all the way over to Blunt Memorial?
I guess
Do you think they wouldn't be on the radar if you were out of the county?
I don't know.
Like, there's no way he was in Fountain City. He just drove all the way to Blunt Memorial.
Right.
Yeah, and it was the pagans and the outlaws. It was the president of the outlaws that got killed, and I just know that because Todd has friends in the outlaws, and they called and told him, and Todd's like, dude, I know that. He's like, I got that guy's phone number. He was in here last week. I was talking to him. But apparently the outlaws the outlaws and the Hells Angels have like this whole mutual kind of friendship kind of thing. And they have contacted the Hells Angels to come to Knoxville to help them deal with the pagans. So probably going to see some more, Sons of Anarchy shit going around in Knoxville.
Goody.
We just started watching Mayans, speaking of.
Yeah, I just started watching that too.
I've heard mixed reviews on that. I've heard some people say it was super shitty. I don't know if they were just completely comparing it to Sons of Anarchy.
I mean,
or if they're just, as a standalone show, they were like, oh, it's kind of crappy.
They're, I don't know, so far they've been very judicious with their direct references. Like, there's a couple characters that pop in and out that you know from Sons. but they weren't like big major characters in Sons, and so it's kind of got a little bit of. It's decent.
There's the president of the Mayans of Northern California.
Yeah,
that was on that show, and he comes down. He's been on a few episodes here or there. It's not. I mean, it's not bad. It's another like Sons of Anarchy kind of show. It's just kind of like Sons of Anarchy. I could enjoy it and watch it, and I'm like, so like all cops are corrupt and all box like how does this shit happen? This is not real life kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Not like watching John Wick. It's not real.
Biker gangs are just misunderstood.
You can enjoy it.
They're just misunderstood vigilantes.
But yeah, so I guess I got to start carrying all the time now because I got to be up in that neighborhood. Well, I don't know where they hang anyway. I remember we had problems with them. We had problems with the Outlaws at the bar that I used to work at. Not problems.
Well, see, they had the Chatterbox had problems with the Pagans, and the owners, obviously, our listeners don't know, but they're heavy in the government, DEA, work with the FBI, all that kind of stuff. So they called a bunch of their local people, and they actually got a hold of like the head of the Pagans for the state. And that guy's like, this is like the fourth bar where they're going to have to be banned from going into. So they got them out of the Chatterbox, and then like the Outlaws started hanging out, and Todd went up and talked to the president and was like, "Hey man, like, we don't mind you guys being in here, but we had some problem with Pagans in the past, and if you guys are going to cause problems, it's better off to go." And he said the guy was like real nice, the president, and was like, "Here's my cell phone number. If you have any problems with Outlaws in here, you let me know. We're not here to cause trouble. We're just here to have beer and hang out. We're good." He says the last couple weeks, they would come in every once in a while and never had an issue or problems, not starting fights. And so, kind of crazy.
Yeah, I remember we had these two guys, and they were like the British motorcycles, like the Triumphs and stuff like that, and super hipster dudes. I mean, super hipster dudes. There's two dudes, and they like built their bikes themselves, and they had like they were actually a motorcycle club. It's them and a couple of their buddies or whatever, and so they made T-shirts, and it said MC on the bottom of their logo. And some guy who at least stated that he was with the Outlaws was like, "Look, man, you can't wear that shirt." He's like, "No, it's just me and my buddies. We work on our bikes together." It's like, "Yeah, I'm all good with it except for that MC down there in the corner."
They are serious about the MC. The MC got their permission. In Tennessee, the permission is from the Outlaws. California is the Hells Angels. And you can be an association. You can word it however you want. But if you put motorcycle club, then you're supposed to have permission from. It sounds like really childhood bully kind of bullshit, but apparently people, they take it serious.
Indeed, they do. Apparently enough to shoot each other in parking lots. Crazy fucking. I mean, that's just a crazy ass story. 9:30. It wasn't even late. Like, it wasn't like 2 a.m. a bunch of booze and shit. I
feel bad for that bar because it was in their parking lot, and it wasn't like didn't have anything to do with the bar. But
I mean, of course, at some level, it did. I mean, they were either on their way in or on their way out. They weren't just didn't. I mean, maybe they met up to the parking lot to fight, but it had nothing to do with they weren't there outside. What did it used to be?
It used to be Jimmy's.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was trying to remember because I pulled it up on my map because I was like, hat makers? Was that what it was?
Yeah, hat makers.
I was like, I don't know that place, and I looked, and it was like Fountain City, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, Fountain City, and I saw the picture of the strip mall or whatever, and I was like, I recognize that, but what is that? So I just pulled it up on my map to figure out what it was. I was like, oh, okay, I've been in there like twice.
Yeah, I think I've been in there once or twice, like 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been in there. Yeah,
I was working right around the corner for a short bit.
Yeah, I used to live right over there. The old duplex.
I walked home from that area.
Yeah.
Only once. I was like, this is crazy. This is the last time I'm going to do this.
Yeah. But, well, no, that was not the pink house. That was the duplex we lived in.
I walked from there to the pink house.
Jeez, that's a long walk, man.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think my car was broken down or whatever. I was like, I can walk home. And I'm like, shit.
God, I had
just going down Broadway. I'm just like trying to walk as fast as I can. I'm like,
yeah, it gets a little sketchy in there. You used to live over there too, Max.
Yeah, I used to live there. Well, but I still kind of live over there, just farther north.
Well, from what is now Hat Makers back to the pink house that we used to live in, he would have had to walk right by the entrance to your neighborhood when you lived over there.
Okay. Yeah, I used to have a house down there by
the Fisher Tire. That's awesome.
Yeah. Wherever that Mexican, what's the Mexican restaurant down there? It's part of Cancun's, but it's not called Cancun.
Senior. Yeah, I think my old roommate worked there for a
Senior
little
Taco?
while. Yeah, Senior Taco. I think you're right. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. I saw you and the missus driving down Chapman. It's like, oh, that kind of looks like their vehicle.
Yeah, we were scouting out, looking for places for rent for Store 3.
Nice.
Yeah, which we can't do without staff.
Yeah.
Fuck. Okay, so let's talk houses. All right, I forgot to bring my yellow slip down here with me, but I did the math on mine. I'm in that 40% range. So, I don't know. We when I had the Compass show a couple weeks ago, they were talking about all the reassessments are coming out, and you had an exceptionally significant reassessment compared to the average Joe. So, run the number. Well, you don't have to. I don't know. Whatever.
It was originally, the original assessment was 169, and the new assessment was 348, something like that. So it was 105% increase.
Right. And so we were talking about it the other day, and it's like, I mean, your county, so you don't have the city. City's doing a tax increase. Well, probably. And so theoretically, you should pay 60% more than you're currently paying in property tax, as I understand it. So if your current property tax liability is, for what'd you say, 160 something?
Yeah, it's like 168.
So you're probably paying like a $1,400 a year, $1,200 a year, something like that.
Yeah, it's like 1,200. Yeah.
Right. So theoretically, you probably be tickling $2,000 a year if nothing changes.
Well, no, I calculated. Yeah. I calculated it, and it was $75 more a month. So whatever that comes out.
Yeah.
So 75 times 12.
900 something dollars, 950.
Yeah, so I go from whatever $1,100-$1,200
to a little over $2,000, right? If you don't argue it, and that was the part that I thought was fun about your story. You said not argue it. You didn't argue it yet, but you at least called and asked a question. Oh, you did officially? Okay.
No, I officially argued it, and so they take all my stuff into consideration, and then they'll send me another assessment. And if I don't agree with that assessment, then I can go to a hearing with, they said it's people of my peers, contractors, and whatever, and I can plead my case, and then they make that decision. And whatever decision they make is the state or the county has to take.
Right.
So if it doesn't matter what the county says, if that board says, no, he shouldn't be going up at all, then they would have to take that.
Right.
Yeah, I was telling Seth about it. I think I read a story maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago about, I guess during the past couple of years, some property assessors have essentially done their job like from home, where they were actually doing, I guess, property assessments remotely.
Right.
Not actually, I guess, going to the property,
Well, see,
which even then, I don't know if they just look at it from the outside.
Because that's the thing I don't understand. Like, this is the thing.
They only look at the outside, because I saw a guy pull in, this was months ago, maybe 6 or 8 months ago, pull in my driveway, and I saw the city seal on his door. And I walked out there, and I was like, all right, so what did she complain on me this time for? And he was like, what? I was like, you guys from, like, the planning committee or whatever? Like, what did she call on me for? And he was like, oh, no, we're property assessors. And I was like, oh, so you're trying to screw me another way.
I had a friend's dad that, like, built his own, like, added a large deck addition onto his house. I mean, it definitely increased the square footage by probably good like 70 to 100%. And all of a sudden his taxes went up, and he was like, how the hell did they, like, why am I paying more just because he had a covered large deck that he put around his house?
Well, if he was, what's the thing? If he was legitimate and pulled a building permit, which my buildings all had building permits on them, then they see that building permit, and then they come out and they look at what you did.
Right.
And so if you didn't pull a building permit, they don't know that you had a new deck put in or anything like that.
I don't know if they like half considered it partial living space with it being covered. I mean, he put a fireplace out there and actually did put like a little hanging bed like outside because he liked to sleep outside in the summertime, but put a mosquito net around it. Would like sleep out in the summertime.
Living space is like a super defined.
Right, I'm pretty sure walls with an easement has to.
Okay.
Walls in a window or has to be a bedroom.
Like when I had my appraisal on my house, talking to the appraiser, I asked him what would I have to do in my basement for it to be considered living space and actually square footage of my house. And he said, "There's nothing you can do." He's like, "You could make this stuff, hardwood floors, beautiful ceilings, walls, everything." He said, "But if you have an area in your house that's 6 inches below the ground level, it cannot be livable space when it comes to appraising a house." So, like, your downstairs shouldn't be. It could be.
I mean, it's the bedroom down here is listed.
Yeah, you can list the bedroom, but not the square footage. It was something, and I said, "Well, how is that right?" Because there's a lot of split levels like yours or whatever where you have it. And he says it can be listed on your MLS as I can't remember the term. It was like living space and livable space. But when it comes to the appraising the house, it's just livable space. And I was like, crazy. I was like, there's nothing I could do. He's like, no.
Well, it's because, I guess that's a good thing, though, realistically, because if you did finish it and put it real nice, you can get the sales value of it, but you can't get assessed for it. Because that's the thing I'm super confused about when talking about property assessor stuff, is it's not sale price necessarily. It's not what it would sell for today. It might be semi-accurate. I don't know. What did you say your new assessment was?
160.
My new assessment, 368. It's about $30,000 less than the actual value of the house. So before it was, I don't know when we bought it. So $60,000.
The question is, if you put a sticker on it for $400,000 right now, do you think you could sell it for that?
Absolutely.
Right.
No question.
But you could probably sell it for.
It's not wrong. That's the frustrating thing. It's like all these people in my neighborhood that are bitching about these new appraisals. The county's not wrong. That is an accurate assessment of your house. We're just mad that the previous assessment was not accurate. You know what I mean?
Right. I don't know.
I mean, I still don't fully understand how your house's value is not completely tied to, but in a way still tied to your surrounding houses.
I mean,
everybody talks about like, that person's letting their grass grow up and letting their trees get overgrown. Like that's killing the property. Or that's killing my property value.
Right. Like our house got egged a couple years ago, and that egg's still on the siding of my house.
Well, when I was talking to this guy about the reassessment, he said one of the issues with why all the increase in property values, which everyone's mad about, he's like, because one of the things we look at is what our home is selling for, and he says you have a lot of people that are moving to Tennessee that are paying more than what the value of that house is.
Right.
So he's like, if the value of the house is $300,000, and someone comes in and says, "I really want this house, I'll pay $400,000," Well, obviously they can't finance it for $400,000, but if they put $100,000 down, then they can finance it for, the $300,000. But all we see is that house sold for $400,000.
Right.
And then that we're going off of, hey, that's an accurate view of this neighborhood.
Right.
We don't know that people are overpaying for houses. And he's like, that's really screwing it up, because right now in Knoxville there's a big boom where there's a ton of people overpaying for houses.
I mean, except he does know that, because he wouldn't say that if he didn't know that.
No, they know that, but they can't. There's no way for them to truly know that. Like,
right.
You can say, yeah, we know people are overpaying for houses, but I mean, how do you know? You know what I mean?
All right.
When you're assessing a house.
But it's just data at that point to them. It's not. It's just data. This is the number that this house sold for. Yes, we understand that these things are happening and whatnot, but how do we go and clarify the difference? Was this one of those houses, or is this house actually worth that?
Exactly.
So you're in District 7. Have you voted yet?
No, voting day's Tuesday.
I'm just saying. Apparently you're an asshole for waiting for actual election day. That's a thing that's been running around.
Who's that?
I don't know. It's just some bullshit. Who are you voting for? Actually, which primary are you picking up? That's the first question.
Republican.
Okay, who are you voting for? District 7, school board, Triplet, or Garrett?
What's their whole name?
Sherry Garrett and Steve Triplet.
I don't know on that one.
Okay, and then you, what do you got? Chuck Severance. What is the total for your commission seat? I don't remember everybody on your commission seat right now. It's Chuck Severance. Well, shit.
Merritt?
Let's see. I got it. I'll pull it up right now. All right, so your Republican primary. Going down the list, your first one is Chancellor Part 2, District 6, Bud Armstrong, Dino Cole, or Clarence Pridemore Jr.?
I don't know.
That's a judge. And then after that, you get to District 7, Rhonda Lee, Alan Merritt, and Chuck Severance.
Merritt.
Because he's Army?
No, because he used to coach my daughter's softball.
Okay. Commission at Large 10, Larson J. Steve Weiner.
Is that it? Yeah, that's what I'm voting for.
It's Larson J. or Steve Weiner.
Oh, I said Larson J. Steve Weiner. I don't know. I have to look that up.
Okay. County Commission at Large 11, Driscoll or Frazier.
Frazier, because I like your commercials.
Okay. That's actually a good... we're coming back to that. Trustee Biggs or Jacobs?
Jacobs.
It's not Glenn Jacobs.
Oh, it's not Glenn Jacobs?
No, trustee is Justin Biggs.
I know. I got you. I'm stuck with you.
But still Jacobs, check. Okay. I don't know much about that race, honestly. General Sessions, Judge, Division 2, Judd Davis, or Sharon Frankenberg?
I don't know about the judge.
And then Board of Ed, Triplet, or Garrett?
I don't know about them.
Yeah, that's the totality of yours. So there's two in District 7.
Don't we have what's up? You serious?
Everything all right?
Hang on. Yeah, never mind. I'm okay. My wife she came out to the car for a second, and she went back into the bar, and she was like, someone just took my bag. But I think one of the bartenders saw it sitting on the table and put it behind the bar. So, got to freak out. Her backpack, her purse, whatever.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're good.
Okay.
Then we have Sheriff.
Oh, yeah. Spangler or... how did I miss that one?
Jimmy.
Where was that on there? Yeah. You're taking Jimmy?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's stick with 7 right now. So Sherry Garrett, Steve Triplet, right? Very interesting development order. So Steve Triplet is the manager of their Chick-fil-A right there on Emory, I believe.
Okay.
And came in. He had a good show. I had a good show. He's a nice enough dude when I talked to him and stuff like that. But apparently, they moved down here from Ohio, him and his family. And he was an administrator at a Christian school of some sort in Ohio. And so that's one of his, I guess, sales pitches as hey, I have experience in school administration, right?
Uh-huh.
I used to do whatever. Well, essentially, this is, how do I word this correctly for the lawyers? It is alleged that he stole money from that school, and when he left that school, it was not on good terms. He has since paid back any of the money in question, but essentially has not been quite forthright about that situation. And, you're looking at, I don't know how much money that school had and spent.
That was triplet?
That was triplet. Now, Sherry Garrett, on the other hand, is in a relationship of some sort or the other with a regular of ours at the shop. But she is also a little crazy to me. So, I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in 7 to pick this one for you. I get the feeling off of her that she is, well, let's put it this way. This is going back to where the beginning of the conversation that you might not have been quite here yet, is when we get into these voucher arguments and voucher conversations and shit like that, I believe that whole conversation that I had on Facebook with some people recently started with any school board member running that is a proponent of vouchers probably shouldn't be on school board, which I 100% agree with. If you're running for school board, your job is to get the best possible outcomes and therefore monies and all the different stuff that you need to have a good functional school system. So if you're running for school board and you're like, yeah, vouchers are great. I can't remember. Somebody put a good analogy for it together, and I can't remember what it was.
Charter schools kind of operate outside of...
I mean, again, as I gather, a charter school is a private school. It's just, it is funded, it's funded in blocks by the number of students it has from the state. But it's not as controlled as the state funding is, and it can be more expensive or something like that. But it's a half step between.
I don't think they're required to meet some of the standards, and that's not necessarily that they're below standards of the state, but they don't necessarily have to.
Right. They don't have to abide by some of the certain rules. They don't have to let everybody in. They can pick and choose their students, which gives them, their stats might look good, but it's like, well, they only took the smartest kids, so of course their stats are better than the public school next door. And even that, their stats aren't that much better anyway. So anyway, talking to Sherry Garrett, she was kind of like, she was good with the idea of vouchers. She didn't mind the idea that the state was essentially working its way towards a voucher system. And that seems like a negative to me as the job. I can't remember what it was. It'd be like, it'd be like that you have a restaurant, you operate a restaurant, you're the chef at a restaurant or whatever, but you won't let your kids eat there.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you not let your kids eat there? Well, because the food sucks. It's like, well, you're the fucking chef. I mean, come on, man. Or it's not healthy or it's not good for them or something like that. It's just that was, I can't remember. There's a better analogy than that one, but that's the one that I'm trying to come up with on the.
So, so the guy, he paid back the money, so that means then he feels he was at fault, or did he pay back the money so he could clear
his name?
Well, but he hasn't. But for all intents and purposes, he hasn't been really forthright about the situation. Again, he wants to be low key about what exactly happened. But you could own it at least and be like, "Yeah, I fucked up. I paid it back. Moving on." But it's like, no. Like apparently, he had a statement about it early when some of the rumbling started happening. And he's like, "I left that job with my head held high." Like that was more or less the quote. And it's like, dude, that's not what the bishop or whatever that ran the church that the school was associated with is saying. Now, the bishop was not specific and detailed about what happened either, but it was like, it was a terrible situation. It was a hard time for us. It was a big deal. Like, it's not something that we want to the inference was that we had hoped to never speak of this again kind of deal. Like, it was a bad time for us in the church. We would have been happy for it behind us, and we're really kind of upset that this has come back and we have to relive this bullshit.
That's crazy.
And so, granted that as a school board member, he doesn't really have access to money to do any thievery parts of it or any
it still says that he's dishonest.
Right. He can't directly abuse the treasury of the schools. But
Yeah, it has to do with his moral character, not
never mind. Go ahead.
worrying about him, but
Right.
not having him worried about him stealing money. It's still his moral character. Yeah.
Right, and so it's a rough race, and the concerning thing to me is like if I were in 7, and if I were in 7, I would be. It doesn't matter because I'm voting for the other one that's on the ballot, but I'm not in 7. I'm saying I'm voting for there is a general. This your whomever wins this primary will be running against Dominique Oakley. And if I were in 7, I would be voting for Oakley, but I'm not in 7. So
Well, good. We don't like your type here anyway.
That's right.
You stay in your district. Stay in your lane.
It's my kids and my school.
On a sports note, I went with AC and his wife to a Braves game.
Uh-huh.
And they were talking about when they were down in Alabama, and they went to like basically a minor league game, and it's called the College Summer League. Are you guys familiar with that at all?
I'm not familiar with anything that's baseball, in-depth baseball.
So even if you don't like baseball, I looked it up and I'm like stoked. And because like the team that started it is where my brother's now porting out of Savannah. It's the Savannah Bananas.
Oh, I'm aware of this. Yes,
You are aware of the Savannah Bananas.
I am aware of
Like
this.
they do all sorts of crazy shit. Like a guy will, like the whole league is nuts. And apparently you have to have at least 1 year of college eligibility, or you've been retired from Major League Baseball for so many years. And so they like, someone batted on stilts.
Right.
Somebody batted blindfolded. They do a bunch of crazy stuff. And I was like, that sounds, I was watching on YouTube some of the games, and there's like someone batting with a flaming bat. And I was like, this is hilarious. It's just, but it's really good baseball still. And I was like, well, when I go down to Savannah and visit my brother, we should go to a game. This is my league, small town, small baseball stadium.
It's the Harlem Globetrotters. If they had a home stadium.
What's the catcher do when you got a batter on stilts? I mean, where's the pitcher throw to somebody on stilts, and how's the catcher catch it? Or if he's like, the backstop's getting that.
Right.
yeah, exactly. But it's comical. I looked up. I was talking to
it's the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, because they don't really play the game of basketball by the rules in the Harlem Globetrotters game.
There's weird rules like bunts cannot bunt. If you walk a batter, the batter can run as many bases until every person touches the ball. So, like, there's a ball 4 and the dude takes off towards first, and the whole outfield comes in, and like the catcher throws it to the pitcher, and everyone starts converging on second base to make short throws to each other. And I'm like, that is hilarious. Foul ball caught by a fan is an out.
That's fun.
Yeah, and I was just reading all these rules, and I was like, that's cool. Anyway, I was talking to John, who works for us, and he's a big baseball fan, and I was telling him about it, and I said, if you want to go down to see my brother sometime, we'll catch a game and stuff. And so he started looking it up. All of May is sold out. There's only 2 games available in June, and the tickets are like $90 a piece. And I'm like, this is crazy. Minor league baseball is like, $10 and you get a beer and a hot dog normally,
Right. So, I mean, I would go. I would 100% go and have a good time. But again, I just think it's silly. It's funny.
On the other side, I was talking with AC about the Cubs and the Reds game at the Field of Dreams, because they built that stadium next to the Field of Dreams.
Uh-huh.
Not the Field of Dreams field, but they built like a stadium that seats like 6,000 people right next to the Field of Dreams kind of place. and you have to be a resident of Iowa to get tickets. So then you can get them on the black, the secondary market where people from Iowa get tickets. $3,500 a ticket.
Yeah, Green Bay was a Jeopardy question the other day, and it was like, as of 2021, there are 16,000 something people on this list. I can't remember, like it was in the category, and it was the Packers waiting list for season tickets.
Yeah,
or that's what it was. It was that there are 16,832 people on an active waiting list for what with the Green Bay Packers or something like that. It was like season tickets, and I was like,
yeah,
sounds right. I mean, I had a buddy. I don't know.
I'm on the waiting list for the Broncos.
I'd have to.
I mean, I don't know if they called my name because I'm not there to get the tickets. I'd have to sell them, but like maybe at some point.
Yeah, the wife asked me if I was on the list. I was like, no. I have a buddy that lived down the street from me when I lived there, who for his 16th birthday, his grandpa put him on the list. And so he was a year older than me, so that was 23, 24 years ago, something like that. Now that we're talking about it, I'd be curious. I had a buddy. Maybe a better way to say it. I haven't talked to.
You'd have to find him on Facebook.
Yeah, I talked to him about 20. Last time I probably talked to him, most of them was like 20 years ago. Like my best friend. Then when I lived up there, I've talked to him a few times on Facebook. He's got a wife and family, and he has an unfortunately large forehead, and his poor daughters do too. I feel bad for him.
I'm going to jump off.
Okay. I appreciate you calling in, man. We need to get everybody in the room, and I've redone the room like 4 times since the last time you've been here. But yeah, like anyway, yeah, cool, man. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you guys
later.
Bye.
All right, so bummer. I was hoping he was going to make it the whole show. Anyway, I don't know, sitting in a parking lot of a bar while your wife's inside drinking and having a good time watching that wrestling. I can't get mad at him for not hanging out, but
wrestling. We just had a local woman. I think she won the title not long ago.
Yeah, it was like
she's been on the news a couple times recently as well.
She's also an East kid too.
Got a big old ponytail.
So I was going to go back with him when we were running through his election things, and the other one I was going to talk about is like, have you seen the Devin Driscoll ad?
No.
All right, so Matt texted me the other day, and Matt Shears, and he said, holy shit. I don't know if he said holy shit. Matt doesn't cuss that much. But he said something along the lines of, Devin Driscoll just spent a bunch of money.
OMG.
Like a bunch of money. And like what I think we talked about last week. He spent like $100-something grand, but it was all buying, like he was paying for TV ads. Yeah. Which TV ads are expensive and stuff like that.
Right.
And so I finally saw one. During Jeopardy, actually. So me and the wife, when we're watching Jeopardy, we're playing along. When the commercials come on, we mute that shit. And we'll talk about stuff. We'll, run to the bathroom real quick, get a water or something like that, and come back to beat the commercial. And so I'm just sitting there in the chair. I'm fucking around with my phone. I look up, and I was like, oh, hey, I know that guy. And I was like, oh, shit, that's Devin Driscoll. He's running for office. This is his ad. This must be what Matt was referencing. And, I mean, I had it on mute, obviously. And I'm not sure if it was an ad for D1, his sports trading company that he owns.
Right.
Or if it was... I mean, I take it back. It's pretty clear it was an ad for him as a candidate, because it's like all the little, like...
Just getting
all the print on the screen was, I will fight taxes, I back the blue, this, that, and the other, is what's printed on the screen. But it's like, it's in D1, like all the footage is in D1. There's like a picture of his family for like 2 seconds, but everybody else in the video looks to be some of his athletes that he works with. They're all in D1 sweatshirts and hoodies, and like it's just his brand everywhere in this commercial. And it's like, is that okay with Cam? Like, that's donated money. People donated money to his campaign. And even though it's clear that he's talking about his political things, it's also clear that this is his business, and these are prime spots that you put these ads in. There's a lot of people seeing this D1 thing.
Right. Yeah, he's just getting 2 birds stoned.
You're right. But he's also getting those 2 birds stoned with other people's money.
True.
And so that I have questions with. And then there's Mr. Hornbeck is reporting that.
Well, I mean, when you donate to a campaign, I guess you could be a little upset. You know, they picked just a whole bunch of radio ads that they didn't think would go anywhere, or bumper stickers.
If I was running for mayor and you donated to my campaign and my ad is for the shop,
right?
You actually have a complaint there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Yeah.
You know, again, you want to talk about things you don't have control over, because like some of the campaign finance stuff is fucked up. Obviously, like Kyle Ward has donated to his campaign. I believe Kyle Ward is allowed to do that with leftover funds from his campaign. Like he can donate some of his funds that were donated to him. Like there's a whole big mess with AOC about she had donated to candidates running in other races. Maybe it wasn't a big mess, but like my brain went, well, if I donated to AOC because I liked her and I wanted her to win the race and I wanted to help her cause. Your
campaign fund goes to your campaign.
And I guess theoretically the argument would be that, well, AOC needs this other person in a position to help her do the things that I want to do. Maybe. Yeah, right. But I didn't donate to their campaign.
Right.
If AOC wants
to... They may or may not support that particular candidate.
If AOC wants to hit me up on the mailing list she has and says, hey, donate to this other candidate for me, because it's going to help me. It's going to help us achieve our goals. Donate to this candidate, even though you can't vote for him.
Right.
Okay, that I could get behind. Maybe not get behind, but I'm like, okay, whatever. That's a thing. Right. But taking the money that I gave to you as a candidate,
I know you guys love me, but I love this person as well, and I would.
Right. I think
if you support me, I would love you to support this person as well.
That's an okay thing to do, but I think taking the money that I gave you and giving it to them is fucked up.
Right.
So anyway, there's been a 7-something page filing to Sharm District Attorney with a complaint on Driscoll's campaign finance, specifically about his reporting. Apparently, there's a bunch of stuff that's like illegible, like it's like this person but can't read it donated this much, and this person donated this much, and then there's people that
all handwritten.
Yeah.
Anybody to transcribe this shit?
I mean, the campaign doesn't. The campaign's not required to.
I think there's technology that does that shit now.
Right, but the campaign just has to turn in the paperwork, and the paperwork's just a piece of paper, and you fill it out. I'm assuming that Mr. Chris Davis's office has to go. They'll type that up, and they'll put it in print and shit like that. But I mean, we can look it up right now. I mean, I got the Election Commission website up. Like,
I mean, I would just assume at this day and age that everything's essentially in print, just to make sure, especially with something like this, where it's campaign finance, where they're wanting to know who, what, how much, blah, blah, blah.
Right, we can pull it up. Hold on.
So like, we'll just handwrite that. Like, did I misspell that? Like, I didn't mean to do that.
All right, so Mr. Driscoll's 425 disclosure. Expenditures of $35. Itemized expenditures to see later at $108,265. Contributions. Like, okay, this person,
Craig.
What is the job? Principal?
Primer? Perper?
Donated $750. Self-employed, dated $500. President.
And self-employed?
President something, dated $250. Self-employed, owner, retired.
I thought it said bourbon bands.
Oh, yeah, Mr.
Oh, no, something Davis. Maybe that's what it is.
Randy Burleson. Burleson Brands, owner.
Oh, Burleson Brands.
Yeah. Let's see if I find a bigger one. That's legible. I mean, the penmanship ain't great, but this isn't too bad so far.
Looks better than mine. I'll give him that. Ain't saying much.
I didn't realize you have to pick which. You had to pick what you're contributing for.
That's right. Yeah, because they do. They do split that up. Because
you're allowed to contribute twice. It's just
you can only give so much in the primary, so much in the general.
Right, $1,600 each, I believe what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that guy. I know that. I couldn't read that if I didn't know who that person was. Like, I know that name because I know that person.
Right.
And that's a good contribution.
Decent.
I mean, it's $1,000. Like, I can't read that one. What is that one?
Starts with an M, yeah.
Mahoney Sued. $1,000. I mean, if I said your name right, I'm apologizing. I'm not trying to think. All right, so this person, Markham Hugh. Oh, this is expenditures.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, it's expenditures.
Okay, so we passed it. But anyway, he spent $2,000 with Markham Hugh, $15,700 with Smart Media. Marcus Hill.
There's another one to Smart Media, $15,000. Choo, wee.
Yeah, Aquadistal Digital Marketing, $15,000.
For some artesian water. Oh.
Yeah. There you go. Another Big Dog Stratagem.
Stationary.
16,000. What does that say? I mean, okay, I get the argument. Big Dog something or other. What is the purpose of the expenditure? Mailer?
Okay, yeah, so.
$16,000 for a mailer?
I mean, it could be the one company that's sending out all the mailers.
Yeah. I mean, no, mailers aren't cheap. I know that.
Right.
Here's one. He wrote one.
TV Bay?
He spent
a door knock?
$2,200 on himself for reimbursement for signs, posts, and meals.
Is it $350 for a door knock?
Uh-huh.
For a door knocker?
Yeah, paid the person. $15,500 for TV bag.
Well, that one they had to scribble out.
$329 for his credit card fees. That's another one that's in the complaint. Is that apparently like some of the dating is weird. I don't know. It's fucked up. Anyway, there's a complaint there on that one. I don't really understand it. But
it could be. I almost see it as a good thing that they're actually being meticulous and looking over these things and not just being.
Oh, it's party
taking them as is.
I'll bet
I don't think it's party. I mean, who goes over this? It's the election commission.
No,
they're supposed to. Oh.
They don't go over it. They just take it in and they make copies and they keep it on file. And it only matters if somebody complains about it.
Okay.
So I'll bet you $100 that Matt Shears knows the person who filed this complaint with the DA's office.
Is that a public records document that they would have to request to even?
No, I just pulled it up off the Election Commission website just now.
Oh, okay.
That's what we were looking at. I don't know what the specific document you need to turn in the DA's office is, but at least for the sake of all the income and outgoing monies for his campaign, that's public record, and it's on the commission website, Election Commission website. So, that ad is fucking. I mean, that was probably $10,000 to shoot that ad, just the camera time of that ad. But I don't know. I think it's a weird system. I think there's a lot of weirdisms in the system. But I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I like Frazier better personally. I think Driscoll is on board. And so this goes to the other thing that I brought. I sent the text on, and this goes into you personally as well a little bit.
What?
In the housing issue. So I've been talking to Hanson. Mr. Hanson Sale. Everybody knows Hanson Sale if you're active in Knox County politics. Hanson is the representative from CAR, the Knoxville Association of Realtors, excuse me, it's Realtor, not Realtor. He's their representative. He goes to the meeting. He goes to the commission meetings. Every commission meeting, they have a housing report, basically. And they go, we've sold this many houses in the last month. There's this many new houses went on the market. There's this many houses on the market currently, blah, 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 blah.
I was looking at that earlier. I was trying to remember where I saw those stats. I was like, there was some kind of comparison as to Davidson and Knox County.
Yeah. And so it's an interesting breakdown of a lot of different stuff. And I talked to him either through chatting on his post or through direct message, and I'm trying to schedule a show with him because there's some again, AC is always in the room because we can't help it. Because what is the definition of high density housing? Like medium density, low density. What does that actually mean? Because one of the things
they have a standard for
I'm sure
each one of those.
No, but that's why I want to talk to him about it. Like these are the details that I don't know, and I know I don't know, and I'd like somebody to explain these to me. Like 10 per acre. Is that medium or high? You know, like the condo complex behind me.
I would assume medium.
Right. I mean, because I think, you know, you think of like a First Tennessee size building downtown.
Right.
That's apartments. That's high density.
Right.
You know, that's high density. That's like a quarter acre lot. And if it was all apartments, it'd be like 1,000 apartments in there.
Right.
That's what I would think of high density. But so, like, I was looking at it. So, I don't know how to explain this to the listener. But anyway, Hansen says, Facebook asked me what's on my mind, so here's what it is. Even after adjusting for population size, Knox County is authorizing far fewer new housing units each year than Davidson County. Knox County is building about 55 units per 10K residents, while Davidson is well over 200 units per 10K residents. The biggest difference, 75% of those new units in Davidson in 2021 were multifamily condos compared to 24% in Knox. And so multifamily condos being duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and then those weird actual condos where it's like 20, but they're little houses that are all squeezed together into one building. Like AC lives in. And has been dying to get out of for 2 years now. You know, and so talking about Devin Driscoll reminded me, because Devin Driscoll's public complaint, at least, not the public complaint about Driscoll, is that he's just a shill to the developers. And apparently a bunch of those people that were on that list that we were looking at are developers. And then if you go back to his other financials, like big donations from developers, because developers want him to say yes to anything that comes up.
All right.
But Henson here is talking about how we don't develop enough. We don't develop enough to keep up. And how that affects housing pricing is another issue. And then you go into I'm excited to try to get a show together with this guy, because I think it's going to be an interesting show. Because I have a lot of questions about a lot of different stuff. Because you get into the more social issues of it, of like wealth growth and wealth gap and all that kind of stuff. The number one, for the average American, the number one asset that they own is their home.
Right.
And over time, that's becoming less and less. And so where in this multi-unit, high-density, medium high-density stuff does ownership come in? Or are they all just going to be rentals? Like, is Knox County going to allow somebody to build another apartment complex?
I mean, in some instances,
is there anything that we can do to encourage ownership instead of being an apartment complex? Because you can own an apartment, like you can own it.
Right, same with the townhouses and whatnot.
Right. But how do we how do we encourage a developer to develop a for sale apartment complex instead of a for rent apartment complex?
Yeah.
You know, and take that ownership and let people take that ownership and then sell it, take that money, buy an actual home, like standalone single family unit, and grow the asset over time. Because
I lived in one that, or a neighborhood that I think was maybe mixed as far as that, where I think there was a realty company that bought a bunch of just little, it was like 3-bedroom small houses. You know, they're all like right next to each other, like 7, maybe 8 feet in between the houses.
Cookie cutter, yeah.
Yeah. But there were some people in the neighborhood that owned. I mean, they had a HOA in the neighborhood,
right? Which is fine.
But we were one of the minority in that neighborhood that rented one of those houses in the neighborhood.
Because that's an interesting thing. I mean, that's another thing that I'm curious to know is that, like,
I don't know if that was a separate developer that kind of came in and was like, okay, there's a bunch of these houses available. We just want to straight up like buy these out so we can rent them out.
Right. Let us buy 15 of those.
Right.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, it's good. I don't know. It's curious. Like that's the stuff that I don't know the answer to, and I'm curious to know, and that's why I want to get him on the show, because I think, because again, that issue of supply is one of the things that's affecting pricing. And he messaged me about it, and I can't remember what he said exactly, because I asked him, I was like, well, how does that affect price as a comparison? Now, Nashville's rate of influx versus Knoxville's rate of influx is another thing that impacts that as well.
Yeah, I think
there's more people moving faster
growing
to Nashville than like anywhere in the country.
Oh, wow.
It's up there. Gary Sinise is moving. Greg Sinise? Gary Sinise. Gary Sinise. Yeah, he's moving, and he's moving his cool veterans nonprofit with him to Nashville.
I read a story about him recently. I don't know if it was about that or something else.
Yeah, I can't remember who else. Who's the other one? Somebody who's like really good friends with Taylor Swift who lives in Nashville is moving to Nashville. I can't remember who it was. I just thought it was a funny one. Like when they said they were really good friends with Taylor Swift, I was like, really? Okay. I don't know. Anyway, like, moral is that, to me, I think the number one issue we have in Knox County is housing. Number one, by a long shot. And we have this weird little situation. We were talking about reassessments earlier. And like
where that lack of housing is throwing off.
Right. That lack of housing is why your house is reassessing so much higher. Because the demand is so much higher. And why the sales prices are so much higher.
Right.
All those things go into that. And those same people don't want a new fucking complex or neighborhood next door. They don't want dicks like Max. Like what Max should do, because he doesn't like his neighbors, what he should do is take that building that he bought, put a kitchen and a bathroom in it, and then rent it because he can. Because he was pissed off about it. He said he looked it up, talked to the county or whatever. Apparently, he could put a trailer park in his yard legally and rent out trailers in his yard legally.
Let's say I don't know what our kind of like what they call it, the Airbnb type things. Was that whatever the proper name for that is?
Short-term rentals.
Yeah, short-term rentals.
I don't think there's there's not a lot of good answers here, but I mean, the number one to me is density, and it needs to be in the city. You know, we want to flex on how cool city of Knoxville is, then let's put some high-rise apartment buildings out there.
Which they did, 10, 15 years ago. They took a lot of the older buildings on Gay Street and turned them into
right. And there's a new development.
High-end.
Right. And they're all going to be high-end, and that's fine.
Right. Because, you're advertising that you're right there in the heart of downtown.
Right. There's a new one going up right there at the corner of Summit Hill and Gay Street, that parking lot. Next to the Hyatt, I think it is.
Huh.
That's a Hatcher Hill property. No, it's not a Hatcher Hill property. It's actually property of KCDC. They got a TIF agreement, and they're going to start, I can't remember, $60-something million project. Kind of cool looking. Like some of the art for it looks pretty cool.
That's what we've talked about before. Is there an incentive for really making housing to provide for, I guess the middle and lower income?
No, there's not. I mean, there's really not. The only way you could do it, I think the only way you can do it is it'd have to be an apartment complex, but then you're not selling it, and it's rentals, which is better than nothing, I guess. But you got to be able to squeeze a bunch of units in a small footprint. Not downtown, but I mean, you get over there in Magnolia area, tear up some of those. I mean, they're not bad houses. I'm not saying we should tear them down because they're bad houses, but they're little, like 1,000-square-foot houses on quarter-acre, eighth-acre lots. They're not tight together. There's a good amount of land to them.
Right.
And go and take like 4 of those and build an apartment complex with 60 units on it on an acre, as opposed to maybe 8. Because then you have, and then that could be affordable in the sense of it's people that work and live in the area can't afford to rent those places because they can't buy the house. They can't buy or rent downtown.
Right.
But again, I don't know. I don't know what the incentive for the developer is, and how do you do it without? I mean, the city could build a building and rent it. Maybe. I don't know. I don't trust that it would turn out well because I hate the government. But I don't know. To me, the incentive is you build the high-end houses and you hope that a portion of those high-end houses get taken up by locals moving up, and then those lower high-end houses become available to middle high-end people, and they move up, and that the whole county shifts up a level of housing, and that opens up the lower end stuff. I don't know how else you do it. I can't imagine a way how else you do it. I'm sure there's some studies and some shit out there that says so, but I can't imagine a way to do it without it having to be highly subsidized, I guess. If it's highly subsidized, that's a different story. But just on the pure, here it is, I want to build it. Like, I can't. Why would you develop anything else? There's market for it. People are buying them left and right. Why would you develop anything cheaper than $500,000? Because I'm sure it's exponential at some point. Materials costs and stuff like that start to, like, between a $200,000 and a $500,000 house, material cost is probably not a percentage difference the same. Maybe some of the finishing materials that make it real fancy, like the Formica countertop versus a granite countertop, but the actual sticks, the 2x4s and the lumber with the square footage. But I mean, the square footage is really where it's at. But I mean, again, building a foundation for a 2-story house that's 1,000 square feet per story, and building a house an extra 200 square feet foundation is not as much more percentage-wise as you're going to sell it for. So, I don't know. The problem to me, because that's really why, like, when I was talking to Henson off behind the scenes, for lack of a better word, about it, I was like, so what does this mean politically? Like, how do we as Knoxville residents make a decision on our candidates given this information? We need to be building more houses. That's the bottom line of at least what he was bringing up in the graphic and stuff like that we're talking about. We need to be building more places for people to live.
All right. The debate is what kind of houses,
right? And how do we do that? Not how do we do it per se, but how do we do that with government? Like the government part, we're in the middle of an election cycle, and it's a big election cycle when you get down to it. There's a lot of seats in a lot of places that really matter. Mayor's office being the top of the list, but the sheriff matters a little bit to that. But these commission races are going to make a big difference. We're going to have we have a good number of commission seats, and it's going to shift the way the commission works a little bit, or it keeps it the same depending on who gets elected. But we only have one incumbent running in commission, and that's Larson, who everybody thinks is going to try to run against Kincannon for mayor next year. But how do we take this information about the growth needs of Knox County, and make a political decision as a constituent? Because Devin Driscoll is a good candidate then, because he's going to help developers develop more shit. But everybody complains about him. He's in the developer's pocket. Well, we need him. Well, we need the commission to be in the developer's pocket at this point. What are we going to do? That's where I'm lost in this. Like, it can't be a complaint and a problem at the same time, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, you can't complain about it, because the thing that he's going to do is part of the solve. It's not the full solve to the problem. It's part of the solve.
I guess that partly comes down to, the kind of developer, as far as what kind of projects that developer wants to develop a certain property.
Right.
There's a developer that they specialize in $500,000 houses, and that's all they want to build. If that's someone that's in their pockets, that would be pushing the board or planning commission in a certain direction.
Well, sure, but again, it's like
that's that developer. Like, we only want to bring in this type of clientele,
right? But forget the forget the donation conversation and all that kind of stuff. But given the information we're talking about from Henson here and our need for more stuff,
right?
What would be your excuse to say no to any development, any adjustment to the plan to get more developments in? Like, I know as a commissioner, blah, blah, assuming I'm a commissioner, I know as a commissioner we have a problem. And one of the problems is we don't have enough places for people to live. There's a lot of people that want to come here. It's good for us on our bottom line as a county. We need them. It's going to help our tax rolls. It's good for a lot of things that we need here. We need more stuff. Like, what excuse could what good excuse do I have to say no? Like, I don't know. In the developer pocket or not, I guess is my problem, is that either way we should be saying yes to as much things as possible, as long as it's not something obnoxious. Right. And I guess the definition of obnoxious is where this really comes out.
Right. There's a lot of people like, hey, we need more housing, but then those people, you see a lot of stories of people that live in not really like rural, but you see it happening on Nubbins Ridge. Where a lot of that's like wooded, but then all of a sudden you're having more and more subdivisions that are popping up.
Right.
Of, you know,
right,
$300,000, $400,000 houses, and people are like, you know, hey.
Right, your farm.
Or even like a you know, decent neighborhood, and they used to have farmland that has been there for 15, 20 years, and their kids, you know, used to go play in that field.
Then you should have bought the farm
or whatever.
When your neighbor decided to sell, you should have bought the farm.
Well, no, I mean, they moved there because that was, you know, a kind of scenic area. Then all of a sudden they're like, this isn't like, you know, quote unquote country on the edge of Knoxville, and that's what little pockets of West Knoxville are. I mean, you can find it where you still have some farmland where that land was a farm for years. Right. And all of a sudden, like, they either got priced out because of.
But I think, but realistically, like, you know,
that's where it comes at that whole not in my backyard.
But you bought the house. You bought the house because of the proximity to Knoxville, because you wanted the access, and you knew the growth was coming. You can't not know the growth's coming. You want the growth to come, but you want the growth to come, whether you acknowledge the fact. And I'll give that. You may not know you want it, but you want it because growth gets you the things that you want out of the city, county that you're living in.
How so?
Because if it's not growing, it's dying, and that's one of those old economic adages. Because if you're not growing, you're at minimum not going to outpace inflation, and then taxes are going up. It's one of the reasons you bought it is because taxes are low. That's why you bought a house in Knox County in Tennessee, because you like it because it's cheap tax-wise. So you know these things are coming. You should know these things are coming. And maybe it's an education problem that people didn't consider it. But it's like, I don't know, like to me, like the one over there on Ebenezer, God, who lived in there? There's a couple friends of ours from high school that lived in that neighborhood, right across from Bluegrass Elementary.
Farmington.
No. The one that has the field out front.
Oh, okay. Bexhill.
Yeah, Bexhill. There's a big fight about that Bexhill piece of land, and one of the property people around town bought it, and they're going to put a strip mall in there, and everybody's fucking pissed.
Right.
And it's like, well,
they're like that's ours. That's always been, you know, our quote unquote field to play for our kids to play in.
Then your homeowners association should have bought it. I mean, I don't know how to say it. It's like I get it. I understand that you got comfortable and used to. This is a thing. This is our thing. But it's not your thing.
I guess who owned it prior when it was just a grassy field?
Don't know. But whoever decided to sell it, and at that time, it wasn't like the Bexhills Homeowners Association or anything, either put forth effort to or could afford to buy it. Because it's probably $1 million piece of land, at least. You know, and so
I'm not good on guesstimating property value.
I don't know either. I mean, that's a blind guess, but you know, I'm just saying it wasn't cheap. But like, it's like if you enjoyed that being there, then buy it, donate it to the county, make it a park. You can't get mad at the guy that owns it for selling it because he needs the money for
right. But
whatever.
Can you get mad at them for that proposal not being brought forth to the people of that neighborhood?
What proposal?
To have them have the homeowners association buy it.
I mean, why? I mean, do they need to? Do they have some sort of obligation? Like, if my neighbor sells his house, does he have an obligation to come to me and say, "I'm selling my house"? I'm going to understand that he's selling the house when the sign goes up in the yard. But is he supposed to tell me before he puts it on the market?
Well, no, I'm just trying to kind of push back a little bit on, like, well, if they wanted it, they should have bought it. But I doubt there was a mailer that went out to everyone in the neighborhood. It was like, hey,
I mean, you got to drive by to get
whoever is
in
thinking
your
about
house.
to save this. I mean, drive by all sorts of properties, but you never know who the fuck owns it.
Yeah,
you don't just assume that, like, oh, that's probably unowned and somebody's getting ready to buy it.
I mean, I would think that if you drive by it every day, you might notice that it's for sale. I think that if you live in that neighborhood, from time to time, you think, I wonder what's going on there.
You may think that, but you assume, like, that it's been this grassy field for, I mean, I moved here in 93.
Yeah, it's been there the whole time, yeah. I mean, Ebenezer was one lane each direction back then.
No, it wasn't.
Has it always been two lanes all the way?
Yeah.
No, it was one lane underneath the train tracks up there at Gettysview. Until they built that bridge. They went over the train tracks as one lane either way. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
But anyway, unimportant. It's It's been sitting there for a long time. It sucks. I'm not happy for the people that live there. I understand that it's annoying.
In my logic, I don't think the people that were looking to sell it would have then notified everyone in the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, I get your logic, but why would he? Why would anybody notify anybody that they're selling the thing unless that's the person that they think is going to buy it, has potential to buy it? Yeah. I think I would. I mean, I think if I owned that piece of land, I'd go. I don't know. I'm
assuming they didn't do that because they knew there would be pushback.
I don't know if there's a homeowners association.
I don't know how much of an established neighborhood it is.
Right.
Because I hate homeowners associations. Like, stupidest fucking shit.
I mean, not really, because if there's I would think as a home, if I own that piece of land and I decided it was time to sell, right? I needed medical bills, whatever it was. I need to sell this piece of land. I would, if that was a homeowners association neighborhood, I would at least tell them I'm selling it because I would think they'd be a potential buyer.
Right.
You know, but hey, you know, I mean, and what could have happened too that we're not considering, I guess, and just kind of dawned on me is it could have been Holbert. I can't ever say it right. Holrob. Sorry, there it is. Holrob's who bought it. It could have been that Holrob went to the guy that owns it and says, "Hey, can we buy that from you?" He wasn't even planning on selling it, and before it never hit market because it was sold. They just hit
him with a big amount,
right.
And they're
that
like,
could have been the case.
You know what? Like, yeah, it's a field,
right? But again, Bexhill Neighborhood Association could have done it too, if they have one. But again, I understand the annoyance if you live there, but sorry, I don't know how to say it. Just sorry. You know, if the zoning issue, I guess, is the bigger question to me. But most of Ebenezer, a good chunk of Ebenezer is commercial. There's a vet's office or something like that right next door to it. There's a landscaping company that's in right there. There's Bluegrass Elementary, and there's a daycare, and then there's another commercial. Like that little stretch right there, there's everything on Ebenezer is commercial. It's Marco's Pizza at the corner.
It would have had to have been redistricted.
I don't know.
Because that was a Weigels for years, which I guess that Weigels would have been considered commercial.
Right, and then the school. But no.
I mean, outside of that daycare hasn't been there long, and there was no other businesses along there.
But I mean,
I think there was a house that did turn into a weird little landscaping company.
Right. Prior to this whole action with this whole piece of land, at least the 2 properties on the north side are commercial. All the properties across Ebenezer are commercial. So that zoning might have changed prior to the sale. Because this new commercial started coming in already. So I don't know. And again, I don't know that part either. Yeah. And that's where the community can complain, is that the zoning is X and you're changing it to Y because this guy wants to do something with it. That I get. But if I'm Holrob, I would just say fine. And I'd put 4 houses on there and sell the 4 houses and move on. If the zoning thing is there.
I mean, I guess that was residential for a long time. And everybody's like, well, I don't want to be like those front 2 lots in the middle of this neighborhood.
Sure. Nobody ever wanted to build something. But again, my point is, like, to go back in this a little bit, my point is growth is happening. We have to deal with the growth. Not next door is not an excuse. You just
that's it, but I think that's the pushback that most people have, and they're like, hey.
And that one's it's just not valid. You got to get something better. I guess that's my point. Is like, if you're going to pitch a fit, it needs to be better than I just don't want it next to me, because we're past that. That's just not the way that Knoxville's can grow anymore. And anybody running for office, and they'll never say it out loud, but they need to be like, listen, development is happening, and we're going to support development because we need development. And if you have a problem with what we're developing on, please bring it to us. But if your problem is, I don't want it next door to me, sorry. That's not a valid...
Just deal with it.
That's not a valid argument. I mean, I don't know what else to do. I'm not happy about it. I don't like that that's the answer, but I think that's it has to be the answer.
All right. I mean, in certain cases I can see that, where, you know, you have a infrastructure issue as far as we need a wastewater treatment facility in this area because they've had, you know, extended growth in a certain area. Or most people are like, I don't want to live next to a water treatment facility. Like, it's constantly going to smell like shit, literally.
Well, we can go back to septic. I'm good with that. Yeah, but
I mean, that's the only instance where I can really say where you've got more on your side of like this is something we absolutely have to have. And I mean, I get it on the growth aspect of it as well. Is that eventually you're going to have to expand in some direction.
But I mean, even that, I mean, it's like.
But I mean, you see it all the time with building a jail or some kind of drug treatment facility where it's like I don't want that around me.
Right, but you don't want junkies either. So, which one do you want?
All right.
But I mean, to me, I guess part of the problem to me is like I think some of the same people that are going to complain about not next door to me are the same people that are like, we don't have enough money for X, Y, and Z. Well, one way to do that is develop this thing and get a property tax increase and get more money into the system. But I don't want that next to me. Now, wastewater facility is not. That's a cost. That's not a value add in this conversation. But development, commercial residential development is a value add. That piece of land in front of Bex Hills,
monetary add, but it's a necessity.
Okay, well, if you if you're going to complain about not enough money in public schools, what you don't want is more residential. I mean, realistically, if you want to get down to the brass tacks of it, you want Knox County to make more money with less residents, so you need more commercial property. And I would bet you a good number of people complaining about this kind of thing are the same people that complain about we don't have enough money in the schools. So, well, here's a way to get more money in the schools without adding students. Well, I'm sorry, not more money in the schools. More money in the county budget that may or may not go to schools.
True, yeah.
But theoretically could get more money into schools without adding students. That would be the pitch. I wish we had cameras on this contraption. It's not really working that well, so...
It looks cool.
Yeah, looks great. It's really fun to talk to you through a thing.
You just been like looking at my eyes the whole time.
Get high behind it. Oh, so what else is going on? I had a whole intro of stuff and I forgot all of it. We talked about Driscoll. We talked about Triplet.
Well, you tried to get me to pick a topic. I couldn't think of anything specific that had really been grinding my gears.
Early voting stats are out and they're okay. 21,807 total. Apparently, the percentage of Republican primaries picked up was more than average. So there's a lot of people crossing over. Criminals. All criminals. That's funny, actually.
Or they all have been listening to you.
They're still criminals.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them to do it, by the way.
That's right.
But that's actually really funny. Like, if I was Daniel Herrera, if you're listening, you can start calling Democrats criminals. And you're not a liar.
You're assuming that Democrats have crossed over.
Right. I mean, Matt's acknowledged as much as well. He doesn't know names per se, but like looking at the numbers and stuff, he agrees that there's probably a good number of people that crossed over.
Yeah, I guess they would have the numbers for people that haven't voted in the past 10 years or so of people that are finally picking up a ballot.
Because when you go do primaries, you're listed and what primary you pick up. Nothing past that, just who you are, what primary you pick up. That is public record, and they can take that through their database and look back and say, well, Sam Alema in the past 3 elections picked up Democratic primaries. This time he picked up a Republican primary. So, crossed over. Criminal.
That would show 0. I haven't picked up any primaries.
I'm just saying, in the example,
right.
You are therefore a criminal. Although you never got charged.
I don't have my bona fides.
You didn't get accused, and this is one of those that somebody would have accused you in the process, and then the appointed election commissioners would have a 2 Republican, 1 Democrat conference to make a decision on your bona fides, regardless of what evidence is available. And then they say, in a 2-1 vote, you're not a Republican, and then your vote still counts.
Still counts.
Yeah, because it has to be unanimous to boot.
Yeah,
and so essentially they're counting on the fact that the partisanship is strong, and that they won't have to prosecute people for this crime. They're counting on the odd man saying no. I don't know. I'd be like, again, Matt, we need to do it. Let's do it, Matt. Fuck it. I'll deal with it. I can afford it. It's probably not that expensive. What if I lose rights to vote in the future? That'd be a problem.
It's possible.
What else? I had a bunch of stuff in the intro. I think I covered it all. Triplet?
Or one party
Driscoll.
could just blacklist you and not allow you to pick up a primary. They're like, oh, wait, sorry, you're on the list. You cannot pick up that primary. I don't think it's the
Well,
thing.
they'd have to be there when I'm doing it, and they'd have to challenge it.
Well, it just flags in the system.
Doesn't matter.
Oh.
It has to happen at the time of my ballot poll. Somebody would have to be there to see me do it, to challenge it.
Yeah.
Once I go and get in the booth, it's too late. Actually, I don't know. Once I leave the building, at least it's too late. Like, they can't be like, oh, Seth pulled the Democratic primary this time. We proved last time that he wasn't a Democrat. We don't count that one. No, it's already in. It's too late. Because they don't get to know who I voted for. They don't get to pull that out.
I remember reading about the recent French presidential election. Apparently, France still uses a pretty old school voting thing, where it's like a glass box that you drop your
That's cool.
hand
That's
ballot
fun.
in.
Macron won again.
Macron against Marie Le Pen.
Apparently, there were some surprises. I don't really quite understand it, but there were some surprises in the not in the final outcome per se, but in the kind of how it shook down. Because apparently, like the center right and the center left parties that have been pretty much in control for years, their two candidates got like less than 2% combined of the original vote.
I did read a weird story on the A&P. They do it's like once or twice a week. They'll do the news that didn't happen. As far as kind of essentially fake news that was out there, and it was some kind of weird clerical error with this one company that was reporting the vote counting. They were showing it on TV on this main channel or whatever, and it showed 14 million for Le Pen, and then all of a sudden it dropped down to 12, and people automatically jumped on that and was just like, oh, collusion, they're taking away votes. But it was just apparently it was some weird thing where in certain districts it was counted actually for both sides, where one vote was counted for Le Pen and Macron.
Huh.
But they had verified accounts going throughout the night as far as numbers, and the one mistaken number of that 14.2 million or whatever that Le Pen had, even at the end of it when they were 2 or 3 hours before the final numbers were supposed to come out, that she was supposedly at that 14.2. Even at the end, she never even made it up to that. But people saw that it went from a higher number to a lower number, and they're
right.
they're changing votes, blah blah blah. That's all this crazy collusion. They're like, no, they fucked up 4 hours ago, given the wrong number.
Right.
But even those numbers they had at that time were not the amount of votes she had at the very end.
I mean, it's kind of fucked up, but not to say there's anything wrong. It's just it's kind of fucked up. It's like, my person's got 14 million. Oh, there's a mistake. Okay, whatever. But we never got back to that 14 million. I can see that as being odd.
Right.
I don't know. The Musk thing, I guess we can talk about Twitter.
Yeah, what about it?
Have you followed this at all? I don't know how you can not follow it.
To an extent, yeah.
I mean, I don't see what the big deal is, honestly. I don't understand why people are bent out of shape about it.
Some of the employees are worried that they're going to lose their jobs.
Sure.
As far as, I guess, their department that's more so over, I don't want to say censorship, but community standards, I guess they call it, or whatever.
Right. That Musk is not on board with that, so he's going to fire people in that department because he wants less of that department because he doesn't want... Okay.
Right.
All right, I can understand that. Right, that's a valid complaint. That's not near the complaining I've been hearing, but...
I mean, I think it is kind of weird. He talked about buying it, or bought a bunch of shares of it to be a controlling share of it. Then they offered him a seat on the board, and he accepted it, but then was like, no, I don't want to be on the board.
Right. Well, what the big thing I learned about this whole thing, in this whole process.
And then they did a whole, what were they called? What was the name for it? A final hour thing or whatever. They basically, death pill, something pill?
Poison pill.
Poison pill, yeah. They put the poison pill in that would like drop the cost of shares that I guess other people would be able to buy it to where he wouldn't have a super majority, I guess, control.
Right, because like his there's a difference in majority shareholder and I can't remember what the term is. He owns he is the largest. He was the largest shareholder, but didn't have a majority of shares held. He just had more shares held than anybody else.
Than any individual person.
Any individual person or fund or whatever it was that owned it.
Right.
And apparently, the person he passed on that was the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. When he was the prior majority share or most shares held person. Or,
MSB?
Yeah, but it's not him. It's the Saudi whatever fund.
Okay.
I think. Anyway, but what I learned in this whole thing is some of the most fucked up thing about the crony capitalist system that we live in is how this worked. So there's again, this is one of those definitional messes that we live in, is that we have a public company, a private company, and then public things, right? So you have a private company. We own a private company. I have two private companies technically right now, right? I'm a private company in the production company, and then I have the shops, right? That's a private company. We don't sell shares. When you start selling shares to the public, it becomes a public company.
Right.
But it's not owned by the public in the sense that a park is owned by the public, right? But in the filings, rulings, and all that kind of shit, when you go public and start selling shares to the public, it becomes an obligation of the board to maximize shareholder profits legally. That's fucked up. Now, it is the correct thing as far as if I'm an investor, that's what I want out of you. But that it becomes a legal thing is fucked up. Because one of the problems that Musk...
They're legally obligated to...
maximize shareholder profits. They can be sued in court if it can be proven that a decision made was known to potentially be damaging to profit. So, Twitter being a good example, it is likely damaging to profits of Twitter to let Trump back on, to open up Twitter to less regulation.
He said he doesn't want to join back anyway.
That's fine. But the point being is that for the prior board, or the semi-current board, but the board that's leaving, even with Musk as a shareholder, and this is one of the reasons why as I understand it, why Musk didn't take the board seat when offered. Because if he really cares about the free speech thing, which, just for conversation's sake, we can pretend that's true. We don't know. This could be a whole elaborate scheme for other things. Halloran Hill had a good take on it. It's a data chase. All he wants is data, and this is a great way to get a ton of data. But
that's been a lot of some people's curiosity. Is like he's been so critical of it in the past. They're like, all right, this person that essentially railed against Twitter is now the owner. Like, what's he going to do to this company that he is
right? But if he was
specifically publicly hated,
if he was the big shareholder and on the board, and he made a decision and pushed the board to, as a member of the board, to loosen the regulations, which other data shows that advertisers don't like that, so they will spend less money advertising, which is going to hurt the bottom line, which is therefore going to hurt the profits. That now becomes a civil crime, for lack of a better word.
Right, but legally said it's knowingly. If they knowingly make a decision that is going to impact, that it's going to decrease profits. I'm assuming legally, there's a pretty wide swath of reason. They can be like, we thought this was a good idea. It didn't work out. Like,
but I think that
we were trying to increase profits.
Right,
it
but
didn't
I think
turn
the
out
example.
that way.
I think the example given is pretty clear. Like, I think it's it's a well-known fact in the industry that advertisers get skittish. Big money advertisers get skittish around less moderation. There's the word you were looking for earlier. Less moderation of social media. Because if you're AT&T or Coca-Cola, you don't want to be stuck between some tweet about Nazism and Trump when they insert your ad in there. Because, like it or not, accurate or not, people are going to associate that somewhere.
Right.
And you
see it as an advertising for that, for advertising with that company.
If you're Coca-Cola, you're like, I don't want to be associated with Nazis or Trump, and you shoved me in an ad between Nazis and Trump, I'm not going to continue advertising with you.
All right.
And so it's kind of a known part of the industry. And so to do that, if Musk was on the board, he'd put himself in a position to get sued if he had done that. But my point in all this is that the idea that that's law, I mean, it's essentially law. There's laws in place that makes you civilly liable for making an action that is not in the best interest of profits. That's fucked up. That's probably the worst. Like, and that's why I started this with crony capitalism, not capitalism. That's not capitalistic at all. That the state is enforcing capitalism. That's not okay. I don't like that. That's a problem.
But it's okay if the company itself promotes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Companies should absolutely act in their best interest. And if their best interest to them...
So if the company requires themselves to do it...
If their best interest to them is profit, if their bottom line number one factor to them is profit, then sure. But it is possible. It exists in many places where that's not the number one priority for a company. But I need funds, right? So let's say... I don't know, what's the shoe guy? The stupid shoes that they give a pair to the African kids or whatever.
Tom's.
Right. So the Tom shoes, right? I'm doing Tom shoes. We're doing okay with it. We got this ethos that we operate on. And every pair of shoes, we make an extra pair and we send it to kids in Africa. That's our thing. That is not in the best interest of profits. If they were publicly traded, that would be a problem.
They could argue that it is a profit maker.
I mean, they could.
That's giving them positive advertising. I mean, for as cheap as they can make the shoe.
Right. They could. But it puts them in, it opens them.
They're going to say it's bringing them more customers because people want to buy those shoes because every shoe they buy.
I agree. I 100% agree.
Every pair of shoes, not every shoe. Every pair of shoes they buy.
Well, every shoe, every pair. The same number of shoes are going out.
No. Not for every shoe bought because you buy a pair of shoes.
Right. But even if you only bought one shoe, they're going to make one shoe and send it to an African kid. Doesn't matter. Same number of shoes.
How many sales? Can you buy just a Tom shoe? I don't think so.
It doesn't matter. Whether it's 10 shoes.
No, it does matter.
If
you're saying you can buy a shoe and you can't literally buy a shoe.
Why would you pick that as the one little fact that you're going to pick at?
Yeah.
Point is.
Just calling you out.
Point is that if that wasn't always policy... All right, so if you're Tom Shoes, right, and that's always policy, that's a different animal. But let's say you're just making the shoes and you're just making the shoes, right? You start making the shoes, you're doing well, and you're trying to scale up. So you need money. You need investors to come in, and you can either get private investors or you decide to go public with it. Now, let's say you're just making the shoes, you're not doing the cool giving the shoes to the African kids thing yet, right? I mean, it's the same argument, I guess, but my point is, so you take on investors in order to build a big factory to make more shoes. And as you're making more of these shoes, you realize, well, we could be making twice as many shoes, but we don't need to because we don't have the sales for that. So let's keep making as many shoes as we can, but let's send some extra shoes over there. Let's make this the policy. And the board votes on it. And if the board votes on that and says yes, that opens the board up to lawsuit by not maximizing profits because they're giving things away. That's not maximizing profits. And again, I get your argument. It can be used as it's a publicity issue, blah, 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 blah. And the efficacy and how often that lawsuit gets won, I don't know. But that the government is
comes down to
instilling
numbers they can prove.
Right, but the government is instilling a profit motive into companies whether they want to or not. That's the problem that I'm trying to get to here. Because it shouldn't necessarily...
Does it go through like the Department of Commerce that puts this rule in place?
I'm not sure exactly who enforces it. But that was the thing.
I'm wondering like what department has put this mandate or whatever.
Right, but that was the problem with the Musk thing. Like that was the thing that I learned in the whole Musk Twitter takeover thing that I thought was the most interesting problem that was highlighted by it. Like I think it sucks the idea that the billionaire class gets to be the ones that makes that, you know, this weird little politics mess that like this billionaire we like, but this billionaire we hate, and this billionaire buys a media company, and this billionaire was keeping it. This one's good, that one's bad. It's like a fucking shit show. Like all of a sudden, Jeff Bezos isn't the bad guy, but he Washington Post a while ago, and nobody really complains about that. But whatever. I mean, I socially speaking, I think it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see what Twitter turns into on the other side. Could turn into a dumpster fire and be no fun, and suck. I don't use Twitter a lot anyway, so it doesn't really matter to me. But again, that little factoid was the most interesting part to me. That this requirement with legal backing for publicly traded companies to be profit-driven, period. I don't like that. That's a problem.
Oh, I mean, if you can find that ruling, I'd be curious to see like where this comes out of.
Okay, I'll see if I can look it up. But again, like that was the reason that as it was explained in one of the podcasts I was listening to, is like
Crystal and Soccer.
It was Crystal and Soccer. Are they imaginary? Are they stupid? Have you listened to them? Do you know anything about them?
No.
Are they untrustworthy?
I would say they're untrustworthy.
I mean, I'm pretty sure this is a Forbes article they were talking about anyway. But
I was just curious. I was just making an educated
guess.
I
get pissy when you question my sources. So don't.
I wouldn't say it was a bad
don't be
source.
Surprised
I was testing my my guessability as to where you may have gotten this.
No,
from.
you're poking at the fact that I have a short list of resources, and you know it.
No, there's just that one that you quote more often than others.
Right, because that's my most regular daily one that I listen to on. I listen to pretty much every show a week for them. I read Compass, so I don't have a lot of other time and energy for other media input sources on certain topics. But I trust their reporting on facts like the Department of whatever the fuck requires or has whatever in place so that a board that is making...
I'm just kind of curious as to when and how that rule came into place. I guess the reasoning behind it.
To protect investors. Like, because I mean...
But when has the government stepped in to protect investors?
I mean, a lot. They bail banks out. They bail shit out. Like different bailouts they do. I mean, people invest in the banks.
I don't think it's necessarily to protect investors. Well, I mean, that could be the underlying cause.
Right.
I mean, it's just...
I mean,
my uneducated guessing of some of the bank bailouts, I guess, kind of feeds into a little like they're too big to fail. To essentially like, it wasn't necessarily to protect the investors, but it protect that mass amount of the public that had, 401ks in this bank or mortgages through this bank, or
right,
et cetera. Where it was a lot more people that were involved in that. Like if this one bank fails, that takes down, 1 out of 6 Americans had money that were a part of this. And we just let 1 in 6 Americans, that had a house that was owned by this bank that bank is now bankrupt.
Right. Which right.
I didn't agree with the bailing out of banks, especially right after that when it was reported that many of them got,
super
pay increases. Right. It's like, hey, you guys did an awesome job. It's like, wait. You just got bailed the fuck out.
Right. You fucking sucked. But maybe you sucked on purpose. That's the other part of it that's questionable.
Oh, no, I mean, they found definitely in a lot of the banking industries with a lot of the subprime mortgages that a lot of investment groups were literally like hedging their bets and betting against it, knowing that it was going to fail. So they also like were able to like watch the dumpster fire,
right, and make money
and profit off it. Yeah,
right. So
like, oh, we knew this would probably happen. That's why we moved our money over into this. Blah blah blah.
Right. That roughly moves us over to the image on screen for you, which is a cartoon. And this will be the final topic, I think.
Yeah.
The student death crisis solved.
Yeah, some of our listeners don't like 2.5 hour episodes. I did see that comment. I get you. Like you said, sometimes we just like to talk shit out.
Right. I mean, that's what we do, and it's like, I don't know, like
at least we're only doing this once a week,
right? But the premise being like you don't have to listen to it start to finish in one day. You can listen to it in chunks.
There's a pause button on there somewhere,
right? Yeah. I should have asked what service she uses, because I think she's doing it off Facebook, which is a bad way to listen to podcasts.
Yeah. I guess you've got to be logged in to do it.
Right. I keep thinking about it's just easy. It's laziness. It automatically posts a podcast if I ask it to, or post to Facebook for me if I ask it to. And
but have it post to Facebook, but have links to the other services.
Right. But I have to go and again with whatever, it doesn't matter. I need to be less lazy and put links to all the services and all this shit. But anyway, so the last final topic would be Alistair from the Angry Atheist podcast. It's not the name of the podcast. I apologize. I'm blanking out on it. Apostates on the Fringe.
Right.
You can check them out if you like. I try to listen to them. It's a hard listen, but I try to listen to them just because I'm trying to understand other people's point of views. So she finally friended me. I sent her a friend request like 4 months ago. Mm-hmm. And we were chatting in a private message, and she's like, I finally accepted your friend request. I was like, okay. And so, like,
just had it in that.
She posts a lot. Like, she's seriously busy on Facebook. But apparently she got banned for a little while for something. Anyway, so this is a cartoon from the economic left, and it's a picture of a graduate in his cap and gown and some guy with a bunch of money, and it says, student debt crisis solved, and it says, crisis is in quotations. Number one, you loaned $100,000 to a jobless teen. Number two, take the loss and learn some financial responsibility. So it's basically saying banks quit giving money to kids that you know aren't going to pay it back. To which and this is probably why she hesitated to let me in, and it's like, I say if the dumbass government didn't guarantee it and make it an unbankruptable, they wouldn't have given the loan in the first place. So it's like that to me is the problem in that. Again, it's a government issue to me. It's not a bank's issue. Although I don't like the banks that much either. They're a problem. But the main reason they're a problem is the government. So Alistair comes back. That's definitely part of the problem. And colleges exploiting the system and raising their costs because more people can pay for it because they get all these loans. I agree. That's a problem. I said if maybe, just maybe, the government had stayed out in the first place, none of this would have happened. These stupid capitalist bankers taking advantage of the dumb government interventions. And she says, when capitalists and the government get in bed together, and I finished her sentence for her, we're all fucked. But then I clarify, because I don't agree that that's capitalism. That's not capitalism. That's crony capitalism at best. And that's one of those definitional things that's a hill I'll fucking die on. Now, it's capitalism to try. It's capitalism to try to get the government, try to get whatever it is to help you make more money. That is capitalism. But it's not a capitalist economy in the governmental sense if the government lets you. You should be trying anything you can to make more money if that's what your goal is in a capitalist system. But the government should not be part of that process in assisting you to do so, ever.
As far as government-backed loans.
Right. And then the specific in here is the government-backed loans. And the government-backed loan says, we guarantee you they're going to pay you. And if they don't, we'll pay you. But they have to pay you. They can't ever not pay you.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae?
No, those are mortgage companies.
Mortgage.
This one's specifically student debt stuff.
No, they do student debt as well.
Do they? I don't know.
or they do student debt. I mean,
yeah, they
student
do.
loans, but yeah, student debt essentially.
Right. But I mean, I go on. It's like this is one of those things that I will fall down the definitional rabbit hole on. Is that is not capitalism as a system of economy, because the government shouldn't play a role in it. They don't get to pick. They shouldn't be picking winners and losers. They shouldn't be talking about who can and can't, and they shouldn't be making rules to make it easier for some and not others. And that's the problem at play here. If the government stayed out of it, we don't have this problem. This specific one. Now, there's other places we can talk about and argue and whatever. That's fine. But this specific one, if the government hadn't gotten involved in the student loan thing on the premise of it's important that we get education, and especially because we were raised that college is the only way you're going to get a job that pays anything.
I think it was more that, or I at least think they stepped more into it because there were so many people that were affected by predatory student lending.
Right, but that's the thing is that, like, you need to be smarter than that then. If you're going to try to put in, like, again, this is my fucking thing, incentives. If you're going to put an incentive in place, you need to really pay attention to how you word that shit. And make sure that it's not something that opens it wide open to predatory practices. I will have a hard time believing that banks and schools didn't know this was going to happen when this was introduced. Didn't see the writing on the wall and say, oh, okay.
Is it a recent thing that government started backing student loans?
It was back in 2098, somewhere in there. 98, 2000, 2002, something like that.
2098?
Yes. That's why I clarified. It was back. I mean, it was back in that range when they started doing the big ones. Maybe a little later than that. I don't remember exactly the time frame. But the government backing of them is the worst thing that could have happened to higher education. Period. Because look, I mean, yeah, and this is another Elon Musk.
It encourages them to overextend.
What was another Elon Musk quote? You know, it's like you're willing to give. The government is willing to back a bank giving a kid a $120,000 loan to go to school. But they won't give that same kid a $20,000 loan to start his own business. Why? Like, where's the logic? Because the education matters that much? He or she couldn't functionally make that business work without the college education? I mean, what's like
possibly
maybe some kids could and some kids couldn't.
All right.
But I mean, fuck, you could have 5 or 6 kids fail, and you still break even. You know, you have 1 kid go to college and make no money and do nothing with their life, or you have 6 kids try to start a business and fail, and it costs the same. I would invest in if I had $100,000. And they say, what do you want to invest in? I'd invest in people starting businesses, not in kids going to school. Not saying education is not important. And there are absolutely careers that it matters. But I think that's part of it, too. There's no question. You just want to go to college? You want to go to UT? Here you go.
Right. And that's one thing that was kind of pushed. It's like the only way to make money is you've got to go to college.
But I'm saying, like...
And it's got to the point now where most people are like, you know, you need to go beyond a bachelor's degree. Like, if you want to be able to make money...
But if I'm a lender... If I'm a lender and it's a more normal system, what are you going to study? Your answer matters, you know, on whether I'm going to give you this loan. Right. Are you going to study something that makes $50,000 a year and it's going to take you 20 years to pay this back? Or you may never be able to pay it back with all the other fees and costs of living? Or are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that makes big money?
Right.
Because then I'm more apt to give you the loan because the job you're going to get on their side is going to make enough money where you can pay me back and still pay your bills and buy a house and live your life. It makes a difference. But that's not a question that's asked. They just give you the money. Right. I want to go to college.
But it affects other aspects of it to where as far as like, you know, just in the medical field where, you know, okay, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to go to medical school. Like, yes, we'll give you this money. But you have the point where, assuming, you know, some people going into medical school are like, I'm not going to be able to make enough money if I'm just a general practitioner. I need to specialize.
Right. So you can take another loan.
Well, that's where we're becoming like less and less of general practitioners. And people are like, you know, the only way to be able to make money and be able to, you know, pay back my student loans.
Right. And as long as I stay in school, I don't have to start paying on them yet.
Right.
And that's another bonus. And it's like, okay, well, you came out on the other side and you're a nurse anesthetist and you make a ton of fucking money. But you also have more than a house payment in student loans to pay off.
Right.
So how are you supposed to?
I said, I think I brought it before. Like there was like lawsuits that were brought from law students that, they had whoever was encouraging them to go to law school. Like, hey, there's all these great job opportunities to get into law school. Once you come out and be a lawyer, there's the job market is so awesome. Then they go to law school, get their law degree, and they're like,
Can't find a job.
Yeah, there's no fucking jobs. They're like, what's going on? Like you guys told me, and I think some of it was colleges that were encouraging them to come to their law school. They're like, hey, we help with job placement, and the job market's great. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll go to Duke Law School or whatever.
Right. But
and they're like, hey, now I can't find a fucking job.
Right. But all that gets going.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
Right.
We thought there was a bunch of jobs out there.
And again, I'm not disagreeing with you that there were predatory practices by banks and by schools specifically, trying to lure kids in to stay there longer and get more expensive and longer term degrees and stuff like that, so that the school could make more money. But none of that exists without the government guarantee on the loan. And it's not even really a guarantee. It's a guarantee that they're never going to get out from underneath you. Or we'll pay it back, and then that kid will pay us back slowly for the rest of their fucking life. I mean, there's stories of people getting their Social Security checks garnished for student loans.
I wonder if it's a kind of like collection agency type thing. When something goes to collection agencies, you owe $5,000 to somebody, but a collection agency buys that account for like $2,000 because they know they're not going to get that full $5,000.
Right, and then they try to collect $3,500.
Right.
And they sell it to somebody else for $1,500, and they just try to get $2,000.
I wonder if it's that kind of thing. If they have that kind of
I don't know
something
how
in place,
all that shakes out. But again,
okay, yeah, you guaranteed this person for $300, and they're like, okay, yeah, we did. Like, what if we give you $150?
Right. But again, my point in this whole thing is that it started somewhere, and I think the majority of it started with the government getting involved in it, and they ought not. I think that's or if they are.
I mean,
if they are, they need to just be a whole lot fucking
I think
smarter.
Some of it on the face value of it. I mean, if in the system, that we're kind of looking at where lenders are looking at that individual person realistically and like, hey, what's the likelihood that you're going to get this degree and be able to pay us back?
All right, so that actually
where I don't know if that was the government trying to encourage lending out for people to be able to go to college.
Let's say what was the incentive for the government to do it in the first place? What do you think their thought process was?
Right, as I was just trying to say, where it's the government essentially, it maybe trying to prevent these lenders from holding back on lending out.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, let's encourage you to lend out people to get our populace to get more educated and provide us, a wider swath of, professionals that are able to better our country.
I don't know.
If the lenders were starting to get stingy about, giving out loans. Because without those loans, those students aren't enrolling in school.
Right.
I mean, they may find other things. Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to think if I'm the government and my job is to exist and fund myself, I'm thinking, I'm not, that's why.
They always talk. I mean, every year there's always different sectors that, we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough engineers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, hey, how do we fix this? And like, let's encourage lenders to, put out student loans so we have possibly a more people that are actually getting educated.
That are educated and are capable of doing the job. Yeah, I don't know. I got to think about it a little bit.
I mean, like, hey, I can't get money to go be an engineer. Like,
right? But
maybe I'll go be a sales manager somewhere.
My capitalist brain is trying to think about it in the sense that what is the incentive? What is the actual incentive for the positive good of my entity if I am the government, if I'm the federal government in a sense? Like, theoretically, get a bunch more professionals working, get a bunch of people making much more money. That means we get more income tax. That's the goal, is more income tax.
I mean, that wasn't my immediate thought.
I mean,
I was thinking more just like being able to serve the general public.
I am significantly more cynical about the government's existence and what they're trying to do than you are. But honestly, I think that's a generous give. I think looking at it in the sales pitch from the government, I think that is a generous way to look at the government, to me, because I don't think they're that either. They're not. It's not a greater good thing. I get what you're saying as far as like this could help grow our
the general
nation.
populace is they're lacking on doctors.
Honestly, I mean, to me, I think it was to me the motivation was an election buy. It was we're going to put this out to you because this is something you're saying you want. Vote for us and we'll give it to you. That's what I think. It realistically is politics, not actual governments.
I don't really see that. I don't see the general populace writing to their congressperson like, "Hey, we need you guys to back student loans." Like
absolutely not by word or whatever. But like you said, businesses are asking for better employees. People are wanting to make more money, so go to college, make more money. I can't afford to go to college. I guess
I can see that.
It's a 2 or 3 step move in chess before you get there, but you could sell it that way. Yeah. Hey, we're going to do this program where it's going to make it easier for you to go to college. And for all the families that never got to go to college and they had kids that were college age or about to be college age, they're like, that's awesome. I'm voting for that guy. Because I want my kids to go to college and I can't afford it for them. And that's back when, it was like $3 or $5 grand a semester, not 30.
Right.
Anyway, I just think I think that is one of those little sub-isms to me that is clearly problematic, and that it takes some exploring, obviously. But I don't get it. Like I don't get it in any other version than politics. Like I don't get it that it's anything other than help me get elected, help my team win. I think that's what this breaks down to when you get down to the brass tacks of it. Because I think anybody who took 15, 20 minutes, real economists, real smart people, and looked at it, would have known better than to write it the way they did. Or did that on purpose because they wanted to support the banks, not the actual people. Because you could have written it better. That we were only going to do it when it's a medical, engineering, top level, whatever the fuck it is, pursuant. And we write it in with factors that we believe are indicators that says that the person that is asking is capable of achieving it. Because one of the biggest issues with student loans is how many people didn't finish school.
Right.
And why didn't they finish school? I don't know.
But you still have those loans.
Right.
But that's the one loan that you can't get out of.
Right.
So it's kind of weird that it's government backed, but at the same time, that's the one loan that doesn't go away if you declare bankruptcy.
Well, that's the backing of the government.
So when is the government backing it up?
That is the backing, is that they don't let you escape from it. That's the support for the banks.
So where does the government step in and actually pay back the banks as far as backing it up?
They don't. I don't know if
they back up the banks and the bank you still owe that money to the bank.
We guarantee you're going to
they back up the banks.
Right. The backup is that we guarantee you're going to get paid on this. How do you guarantee that?
We'll let you charge them till they die.
Right.
We'll never step in.
The IRS will jump in and help out and make sure that we garnish their checks when they do have a job, and they'll pay you back that way. But they will never escape this debt.
Yeah.
So, go. I mean, I don't know. Like I don't know how. Even if you're not particularly predatory, I don't know how you should see that and don't go. Any kid that comes to us, give him a loan. Just like anybody who didn't need their COVID checks, you don't say no to that. You just take your check and go on with your life.
Right.
Like it's that's what it feels like to me. Is that it's that simple? Is that any banker worth $1 says, I can give out all the money I want, and I'm going to get it back with interest. Period. No matter what. Anybody that comes in asking for it, give it to them. That's the policy of this company, this bank. Don't care.
I'm assuming it's more complicated than that.
It's probably a little bit more complicated than that. All right.
Last call? Nothing.
Anything? Yeah.
No,
I don't know why I even call last call anymore. Outro?
No, thank you.
Almost agreement. Gmail.com. almostinagreement@gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to our website, almostagreement.com. The voter guide is up, and it's still correct. I'll go in later this week, and I'll put some X's or cross through the people that are losers in the primaries to get them out of the way. Yeah. I'm sorry I haven't been putting too many interviews out. That's probably going to stay a little bit slower of a trickle. I'm trying to get a party show next weekend. That's my goal, is get the party chairs back in here, Daniel and Matt, because I want to understand what a Republican and a Democrat actually are, like by rule. And so I figure I ask the people that are supposed to know. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, favorite podcast provider, YouTube, like, share, friend, follow, retweet, tell your friends about us, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's what we got going on. So, anyway, almost here, everybody. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.